Good afternoon, everybody. I will go through the chair's announcements first, and then I'll have a special announcement afterwards that might be of interest to the members here. Okay, thank you. Please excuse my cough. This meeting is taking place in the council chamber, Shepton Mallet, and we have members of the planning committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded, excuse me, even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, then please let me know sort of now. Okay, thank you. Members who have brought their own device with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off, and very importantly, that their device, microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any other member of the public viewing by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and then catch my attention, or a vice chair, the legal advisor, or lead officers. When members in the chambers speak, remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please, can all mobile phones be switched to silent? And thank you. But before I move to apologies for absence, I'm going to ask the committee if there is anybody who would like to act as my vice chair today. Ros, okay. Is anyone else or just Ros? Okay, Ros, if you would like to come round here, that would be good. Maybe it may be a bit of a tight squeeze. You can get there. Okay, yeah. There we are. I think we've made a bit more room. Brilliant. Thank you, Ros. Okay, so we are moving to apologies for absence, please. Oh, you're still there. You've been wandering. Okay.
Chair, yes, there's two apologies. We have Councillor Edric Hobbs, who is being substituted by Councillor Ros White, and Councillor Susie Denton is unable to attend today. Thank you.
Susie Hart, we're not related.
Sorry, Susanna Hart.
That's great. So we're nearly at full strength today. That's good. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the minutes now of the previous meetings. So I've just got to click over to there in theory. Hold on. It doesn't seem to be. Okay, I know roughly.
Click on that.
That's what I've done.
See page 13.
Ah, yeah, got you. We're there now. Okay, here we go. Page 13. These are the minutes from planning committee, the council chamber on Tuesday, the 1st of April. Okay. Thank you. So, page 13, page 14, page 15, page 16, And that's the ones for there. Okay, everybody happy with that one? Brilliant. We move on.
Proposer and seconder, please, Chair.
Oh yeah, can't do them all under one, can we? So, okay, Storm, you're proposing, yeah? Thank you, and Ross has seconded. Okay, that's that lot. Next, we move on to the meeting on the Tuesday, the 4th of March, and we start with page 17, page 18, page 19, page 20, page 21, page 22, and page 23, page 24, and page 25. Everybody's happy? Can we have a proposer, please? Yeah, Martin, thank you. And the seconder is Rose again. Thank you. Okay, now we're going on to the minutes of the meeting on Friday, the 28th of March. So we start with page 27, page 28, page 29, page 30.
Chair.
Did I hear somebody?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Helen.
I'm not sure if it is page 30. I'm looking at the actual minutes. I'm looking page 5 of the minutes, which starts at the top. Development would cause.
It's got page 30 on mine.
Okay. Can you tell me if the top line says development would cause a loss of green space? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Further down, it says the next speakers were the divisional members. Councillor Michael Dunk was the first to make comments. It's just a question of accuracy in that he's not a divisional member for that particular division. Further down, it talks about Shane Collins speaking, and he is a divisional member. So it's just a factual question of accuracy. On the whole, I think these are very well written minutes, and they have all the detail in them that this particular topic deserves. And I'd like to thank the officer for doing this level of detail. But that's just one small point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I'm sure that can be fixed. No problem. Cheers. Now, okay, so we're moving on to page 31, page 32, page 33, page 34, page 35, and page 30, no, page 35 is the last one. So we're happy with those. So anybody, Helen's proposing, and I'm looking for a seconder. I think Adam, your hand was up first. Okay, so Adam's seconding. Thank you. So that's the minutes dealt with. Next, we go to agenda item 5, which is it? Yeah, I thought we were going to. I can see that. It's just on the thing there. So, can we have any decorations of interest? Rose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Just for clarity, I put up my hand to speak or requested to speak as a ward member for item 5 on the agenda. That was prior to me being aware that I was going to be a substitute at this meeting. And also, and much more importantly, I'm delighted to see that both the clerk and one of the councillors from the parish council are here, as I was going to speak in support of the parish council's comments. And therefore, I'm quite happy to not speak. And on either occasion, I'm not predetermined. I was purely acting for the council, parish council, if needed, and I'm no longer needed.
Okay, thank you, Rose. I think everybody understands your position. Thank you. So that's that. And then do we have any, I think it's public speakers, isn't it? No public speakers there, no. Okay, so now we can move on to agenda item 5, which is, let me see here. This is the one, outline planning permission for, hold on, no. Yeah, I think this is Wookie, isn't it? This is
Henry
Jenny.
Lane.
Yeah, that's it. So that's the one. So, okay, if we go to our presentation. I think Jenny's doing it, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is outline planning permission with some matters reserved. So it's all matters reserved apart from the access on this one. And the site is north of Henley Lane at Wookie near Wells. So since the committee report was published a couple of weeks ago, we've had 3 more letters of objection raising the concerns shown there. So it's just a quick update. All those concerns have already been discussed in the officer report. So going on to the application, this is the site itself in yellow. So it's in the northeast corner of Wookie, just like I said, north of Henley Lane. Again, a closer view of the site. So as you can see, the access is proposed to come between existing dwellings to the south, and that will be taken from Henley Lane itself. It's also proposed that over to the west side of the site that the agricultural field access is going to be retained, so access to the field can remain off of Doctors Hill. In the location plan of the site, so the red line is the actual application site, and the blue line to the north obviously shows land within the same ownership, but isn't actually part of the site itself. However, you'll see in a future slide that it is proposed to accommodate some of the phosphate mitigation for the scheme. Okay, and a survey of the site. So it's currently the bottom section of 2 fields with a hedgerow running between them. There is an existing field access gate towards the southern end of that hedgerow, but it's proposed to move the access further up towards the centre, and then the access track will run through. I'll move on to a slide that shows that in more detail. And then the access will be down in the southeast corner down here, with some public open space proposed on the western boundary. So this is just to give you the wider context of the village, really. So there is other backland development within Wookie already. So the fact that this is proposing backland development isn't an alien concept for the village. And this is the indicative proposed site plan. So as I said, this is outlined, so it is only indicative at this stage. And see the access comes in, the access road curls around and comes between the hedgerow up towards the western side of the site, where there'll be a turning space for vehicles, and then some public open space, as well as suds basins in the southwest corner and over here by the access in the southeast corner as well. It's proposed that at least 3 of these bungalows will be, or at least 3 will be bungalows for the over 55s, with the others being a mixture of 2-bed houses and possibly some more single-storey dwellings. But like I say, it is only outlined, so that's still to be resolved at the reserve matters. So this shows the visibility displays for the site as you come out. This is an existing access which serves these new dwellings, which were permitted in 2013, I believe. So the access is already there, and currently this area to the back is parking for these properties. So the access will just go straight through the parking area and up into the site behind. Again, so this just shows that a refuse vehicle can access the site and manoeuvre to exit in a forward gear. And drainage concerns have been raised by a few residents, I believe the parish council as well. So this just shows they have submitted a drainage strategy and a flood risk assessment with the application. And it's proposed that there will, like I said previously, there's some subspaces on site, and the drainage will link into the existing drainage for this newer development to the south, which I believe there's a culvert that runs along the south of these dwellings as well. So it will link up to that one. Again, the details of these can also be conditioned in more detail at the reserve matter stage. So in terms of phosphate mitigation, it's proposed to plant trees in the remainder of the fields to the north of the site, as well as making a large area of land even further north. You see the sites down here in the south, and then this area of land up here will be made fallow for a number of years in order to offset phosphate generated from the development. So this will have to be made fallow up till the upgrade of the wastewater treatment works in 2030. So in terms of access to the local services in Wookey, and you see the application site in red up here. These two circles show the distance to services within the village. So you've got the church, cafe, bus stops and pub kind of in the centre of the village there, and that's all within the 400-metre circle, which is about a 5-minute walking time. There are also footpaths that come from the access at Henley Lane all the way into this centre of the village, so it can be accessed via footpaths. And moving on to some photos of the site. So this is the rear of the newer development, so permitted in 2013, and that's the parking area to the rear of those new properties. Again, just a picture of the rear of the newer properties with the parking area. So this would be the access to the site coming through these two dwellings. This is the proposed access. It will come up through this gateway and into the site. Okay, so again, another angle of the view of the newer dwellings. So this is the application site, obviously to the rear of those dwellings. This field will be the application site itself. Here's some more pictures of the site. So it's only the southern kind of, not even half really of the field, southern third maybe, that is going to be part of the actual built development area, of the remainder of the site being phosphate mitigation through the tree planting. So this is the rear of the older properties along Henley Lane, so the original properties along here, and this is the next field across. The red arrows in the bottom kind of give you an idea of where the picture was taken up this end and where they're facing. Again, looking out, this is looking north, so from the rear of the properties kind of looking north from the field. So this would be the hedge on the right hand side that will need to have a break put in for the access track to come through. Again, so the fields and looking out towards the, so this is taken almost from the existing agricultural field access off Doctors Hill, looking east out onto the sites. Again, looking down towards the existing properties. And then this final slide shows a pedestrian access that cuts through the middle of the properties along Henley Lane, which accesses the rear of those properties, but it's not part of the application site. As you can see, there is a fence with these concrete posts, which will divide it from the actual application site itself. So these properties will still be able to gain access to the rear of their gardens through this link. So I suppose Section 106 will be required for the outline permission, which would include the management of the public open space and SUDS areas, the provision of at least 3 bungalows for over 55s, and to secure the off-site phosphate mitigation. And the recommendation is to approve with conditions. Okay, thank you very much.
Apologies there, I was distracted for a second with myself. Okay, so we move on to the speakers at the moment. And our first speaker will be from the Parish Council, which is Councillor Andy Tagg, please. Thank you, Andy. You have 3 minutes from when you get started. So, okay. Cheers.
Okay. Wookey Parish Council and its residents have strongly objected to this application from the outset. We are aware that due to this and previous councils' poor performance and planning, you have less than half the required 5-year housing supply. The National Planning Policy Framework requires a presumption in favour of approving applications where a local plan is out of date, as this one has been for the most part since 2012. Benefits of approval should be seen to outweigh the harm done, that being to go against the plan that wouldn't normally allow such a development. I'm sure members of this board have been well informed of this and the potential costs involved to the council of yet another lost appeal should they refuse this application. However, the addition of approving 9 more houses to that 5-year supply is of no benefit to our community. This application sits alongside the developer's previous approval, also of 9 houses, both evading any requirement for affordable housing contributions. This development is one of 5 developments in the village during this plan period, all at 9 houses, 45 new houses and no affordable housing provision. There is also no benefit to our community in terms of infrastructure provision or funding at this, as this and the previous council thought it best not to adopt community infrastructure levy, which is a tax on developers to ensure that infrastructure might be funded to grow with housing. This one application alone could provide around £72,000 towards infrastructure projects in our area if the same rate of CIL was applied as it does just a few miles down the road in the old Sedgemoor district. One of those worthwhile infrastructure projects would be the active travel route that is formerly the Strawberry Line. This passes only a short distance from this site and when fully completed could be extremely beneficial to the village of Wookey, as was the railway before it closed. Every week, hard-working volunteers make this project a reality by giving up their time and their physical effort. Enthusiastic fundraising is essential in this area as there is no infrastructure levy money available. Funds raised in other areas of Somerset are only spent in the areas where it has been raised. Therefore, if this board is mindful to approve this application, Wookey Parish Council and its residents would ask that it is with an agreement of a developer contribution towards the active travel route that was formerly the Strawberry Line. We would request that this is a sizable amount to reflect that this planning application is essentially contribution and tax-free at present. Such a financial contribution would make a significant impact to the volunteers' ability to deliver this active travel route. Almost as importantly, it would go some way towards the benefits of this application outweighing the harm done for our community and not just for this council. Thank you.
And thank you, Andy, very much indeed. Cheers. And our next speaker is Mr. Alex Horton. Is that correct? Agent, right. Cheers. You have 3 minutes as well, please, Alex. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. So my name is Alex Horton. I'm the agent for the applicant. We thank council officers who have worked with the applicant during the determination and have concluded through their thorough report that the planning balance weighs strongly in favour of approving this application. We urge you to support your officer's recommendation for approval based on their comprehensive assessment. We are aware of the concerns that have been raised by the parish council and local residents, but these have been considered as part of the application process. Although outside of the settlement boundary, your officers confirm that the site represents a sustainable location for development with good access to the village centre via the footway along Henley Lane, which has previously been provided by the applicant via the previous application. The location of the development and the applicant's proposals to provide significant green infrastructure will create a formal edge to the settlement, minimising landscape and visual impact effects. This includes providing public open space on the site and retaining and reinforcing existing hedgerows. Officers consider the proposed housing would largely be hidden from views on the surrounding roads, and the large areas of green space help to blend the form into the landscape. The scheme has struck the right balance between the number of units and the generous areas of landscaping and open space, which have been informed by a landscape character assessment that responds to the density and the urban grain of Wookey. The outline nature of the development will provide the council with the opportunity to assess details of appearance, layout, scale and landscaping as part of reserved matters. However, the parameter plan submitted will ensure there are no negative impacts on residential amenity, with separation distances of more than 25 metres to properties on Henley Lane. The Parish Council has noted that the existing housing requirements for Wookey have been met, but councillors will be aware that these figures are severely dated. Housing need across Somerset has increased by over 40% under national planning policy changes, and the council's housing land supply is just over 2 years. The council needs to approve sites in sustainable locations such as this one to meet these shortfalls. The elderly persons' homes, which will be secured via a legal agreement, will enable older residents in Wookey to downsize to more appropriate accommodation, freeing up family homes within the village. There are no objections from any of the statutory consultees, and the applicants have worked closely with Natural England to prepare a scheme for phosphate mitigation, which will include woodland planting to the north of the site. Given the significant benefits of housing delivery, including elderly persons housing, biodiversity enhancements, sustainable drainage solutions, and the provision of public open space, we consider this to be a proportionate and appropriate development that clearly merits the council's support. Thank you.
And thank you, Alex. Cheers. Okay, so we got no more public speakers, so we will move on to the committee. Who is going to be first to open the debate? I'm looking at Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first, I'm always disappointed when we lose agricultural land to development because, I mean, first of all, it's a finite resource and we've got a burgeoning population. It's a worry for the future. But I know that's not a planning consideration. So apart from that, I can't see too much of a problem with it, although I did catch on to what the gentleman from the parish council said about access and whether we could improve it by having some kind of donation, whatever, to the active travel group. I think that's quite an interesting format. I just wonder if we could have some advice from the officers about whether that would be possible, please.
Thank you. Yep. Where are we to? Simon or Jenny? I don't mind, whichever.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Reid, I think it is a valid point, and you'll remember, members, when you considered the application at Elm Close, you considered whether or not that development should improve the accessibility of the site by making a contribution towards delivering the Strawberry Line. Again, if you do decide on that basis, what I'd urge you to make your decision based on delegating authority to your officers to agree the scope of a contribution with the applicant, as you did on Elm Close. Again, you'll probably remember the quantums and the sums of money. So again, the representative from the parish council referenced a figure that he thought would be appropriate and equivalent of a SIL contribution. It's unlikely that we would secure a contribution that high. Again, we have to work within the legislation provided in the NPPF. So we always have to seek what's proportionate to mitigate the impact of the development itself. But Chairman, if the members do resolve to make a decision subject to that contribution, what I'd suggest is that you delegate authority to officers, and we will report back to you and the ward member how those negotiations go.
Right, thank you, Simon. Rob, are you happy? Well, happy as you ever are.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, very happy. Could I make a proposal then? Would it be possible to accept this application with the proviso that we have a substantial donation to the Active Travel Group, the amount of which to be decided by the officers and yourself, Chair, as Chair, and the local member. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that somebody will come and second that eventually. Yes, I can see you there, Helen. Don't worry. Your turn.
I don't know if Ross wants to second first, but can we have a debate, a little bit of a debate before we go to the vote? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I've got some questions. What we've heard is that in terms of proportionate growth, that the local plan is considered out of date. It's only out of date, dare I say, because the government has given us extra housing targets. It wouldn't be out of date otherwise, as far as I understand. Right, so that's why it's out of date, because they keep upping the housing targets. It was that they were going to get something like 40. I can't remember the exact number now. It's in here somewhere, and they've already taken. I can't remember what it is, but at what point do you say this is disproportionate growth? At what point, if they take 50% more than they were supposed to take as a small village, or if they take twice as much as they were supposed to take as a small village, or if they take 3 times as much as they were supposed to take as a small village, at what point do we say that is disproportionate growth? So that's my first question. My second question is about the housing mix, and the fact that all of these 5 last applications have quite deliberately only put 9 houses in, because they know that if they put 10 in, one of those has got to be affordable. It's cynical, and it's obvious that the developers are just trying to make money on that basis. This happens all around the county. I think that the threshold is slightly different in other districts, former districts, but nevertheless, it's very disappointing to see that approach, and it doesn't come across well to us. To see that. And also in terms of the housing mix, again, I was at an LCN meeting recently, and somebody from Road in my part of Somerset, right over near Wiltshire, was saying that all the houses that were being built were all for people that were going to retire. They were coming from outside of Somerset, and they were going to retire. Now, this is good that we've got 3 bungalows. I mean, this is one of the best things about this, is that we've got 3 bungalows. It's great, but it's still aimed at a sort of, because there's no affordable housing, at a middle class sort of demographic, and I'm not sure how many young families are going to be able to move in. I mean, we've got the theory that there's somewhere nice for people to downsize, and then that will free up some of the houses, hopefully in the village, some of the family houses in the village. I actually think that's quite good, and I'd like to see that in the new local plan going forward that we're doing for Somerset, that we start to build nice, attractive houses for our ageing population, so that we free up some of the family homes that some of the people are getting older in, and there's nowhere really that they want to move to, because there's nowhere nice to move to. So that's good, but at the same time, we're not really, I don't know that this housing mix is going to bring in young families, and that's what villages need. In Road, they were saying something like 70% of their population is over 60. I don't know what it's like in Wookey, but that's another point. And then lastly, I'm pleased to see that the Wessex Water has got a plan for this wastewater treatment works. I don't know if they've got a lot of sewage going into the rivers there, but at least they've got a plan. Lastly, this is an outline application. I want to ask about sustainable construction. They've said that they're aware of the options for on-site renewable energy generation, energy efficiency at paragraph 8.50, page 51. But is it possible for an outline application to put in a condition saying that we want solar panels and we want them to consider air source heat pumps at this stage? Can we do it at this stage, or have we got to wait for reserved matters for that to come in? Okay, thank you.
I'll just come in there. Thank you, Helen, for that, and I appreciate your contribution. You had a couple of very good things that you said there. Cheers. Thank you, Simon. Would you like to come back?
Sorry, Chairman. It's condition 19, Councillor Kate. The point.
Sorry, I haven't gone through all the conditions. Condition 19. So it actually pins them down. So they're basically, sorry, I didn't realise I still got this on. So basically, you're asking for a detailed sustainability strategy statement, and that shall show how they'll be achieving energy efficiency as set out in national design guides through siting, layout, design, and all the rest of it. So, but we're not actually specifying that we want them to put solar panels on, can we? Are we allowed to?
We could amend that condition, but that's the house style condition because it provides us with the opportunity at the reserve matter stage to say, yeah, what you're proposing isn't acceptable, and we would encourage you to look at other strategies such as roof mounted solar panels. So I wouldn't suggest that we need to change that condition because it provides us with a control.
Down the line, I understand that the national government are going to try to have more applications not come to planning committee, but be decided by officers. If officers are not as on sort of the case as we as a planning committee are, might they not then say, oh, that's fine, it's okay because it's fabric first, and they'll just let them get away with not having solar panels or anything else. That's why I'm kind of want to have it put in now, because reserve matters might not come in for another year or two. That's why
Thank you, Helen. Dawn.
Thank you. Just a little bit further down in that condition does say about renewable energy on site. So that would cover solar panels, it would cover potentially air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, that type of thing. So it is all covered in that condition, but the detail would come in to get agreed either through the reserve matters or through discharge of condition. In terms of officers and members alliance with sustainability issues, Somerset Council has declared a climate emergency, and we have got supplementary documents for that. So we are, as officers, very aware of the climate issues and sustainability issues that members are also very concerned about.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So who would like to speak next? Claire, did I see your hand up?
Oh, I did ask a question about what was proportionate growth and what was disproportionate growth. What?
Okay, so Dawn's saying she can answer that for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I must admit there was a similar question asked in South Committee, because in the absence of a 5-year land supply, and particularly where in the east and south areas we have a quite low level of 5-year land supply, there are sort of relatively sustainable settlements that are getting quite a lot of growth on the edges. In terms of what is too much, effectively you would have to get to the point where cumulatively something falls over. So if you were putting an extra 9 dwellings on something and Highway said, no, the highway is too congested, we absolutely can't take it because of the impact on the highway infrastructure, that would be one too much. At the moment, this application for 9 dwellings is supported by all the consultees. So whilst, it is over the minimum growth figure that's set out in the local plan, it is a sort of minimum indicative figure, not a maximum. And in terms of the local plan being out to date, members will be aware we are going through the sort of stage 2 local plan process for this area. But given the initial plan's over 5 years old, it would be considered out of date just because of its age as well. So it's not just the 5-year land supply bit.
Thank you, Dawn. And are you satisfied with your answer, Helen?
Yes, but I have a further question, but other people might want to speak.
Yes, Claire is already there. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. It's always good to follow Councillor Kay with her detailed questions. I mean that sincerely. So I note the consultees see no issues, and we know what that means. That's well documented in many planning sessions, that we should really see no objections because the consultees have a weight, don't they, to their views as the experts. So my sort of question, one's easier than the other, but so as a council, with our council plan, with the ruling group, we stand for a greener, affordable housing, active travel. How do we get that as a default in our planning discussions and notifications to applicants? Why do we have to say it every time as a sort of afterthought? Because already our consultees have given their views on it. So this is what we want. This is why we're elected, many of us here. And I'm sure our officers, our experts here, we'll see no issue with that, but I just want planning policy to follow what we want as the lead group, and other parties I'm sure agree about the commitment to these things. And when you look at what the residents have said, they kind of feel that this is dropping down on them. rather than being done with them. So why do we have to ask as if it's a sort of almost like a bit of a surprise ask at the end of all the decisions being made, by the fact that the consultees have already said there's no issues? The easier part to my question is highways. Is it standards advice again? Because I can't see any feedback from highways in the files, and you'll note that I do raise that a lot about highways giving standard advice rather than more giving me more confidence in that scrutiny. Not in the confidence. I have confidence in the department and the officers, of course, but just in what was done to ensure that the highways aspects are fine, rather than standard advice, which feels like a paperwork exercise. So 2 parts to my question about highways, input on this, and secondly is where is the policies of this council in this particular planning application, and can we make it more of a default rather than an afterthought? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claire. It's interesting. Who would like to pick that one up? Jenny?
Yeah, I can answer your highways questions. It wasn't standing advice in this case. They did provide full comments. We consulted them twice. The first time they requested some additional information in the form of swept path analysis for the refuse vehicle, which is one of the drawings on the presentation, and also clarification on the visibility displays. That was provided during the life of the application, and then following that information being provided, they didn't have any objection to the proposal, subject to some conditions, which are the conditions that are included on the recommendation.
Thank you. I meant to say what a really good presentation your presentation was. It was excellent. But about the comment, the first part about the active travel contribution being almost like it's going to be a hard thing to get, but we really want it. We really want to show we're bringing something to this community, rather than just dropping some houses down on them.
Okay, I thought I saw Dawn there with her finger. Or Simon first, whichever. Simon first.
Yeah, I'll start off, and then Dawn can add anything. Councillor Sally, I think in terms of the active travel contribution, clearly members have raised it, and we've said we feel we can pursue that. And if you're happy with that, let's leave that there. In terms of the policies and the way in which we assess applications and how we report them to you, we always list the application. We always list the policies in the application report, assessment report. So hopefully that gives you an indication as to the documents at local and national level that we've assessed the application, and then how we've assessed it in the subsequent sections that set out, for instance, the highway safety implications of the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Dawn, you're happy now. Okay, everybody else happy? Claire, are you happy? Good. Barry, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Somebody said just now that this is quite a cynical application. You could look at the other side of the coin and say it's a very good application. A few houses here and there are much better than a lot of houses dumped in one spot. I think this has got a lot going for it. I would query with the plan of the sale of the bungalows to over 55s. Is that the first sale of the bungalows, or is that in perpetuity? And how do you stop it?
Yeah, through the legal agreement, it would bind the occupation on that basis in perpetuity.
Thank you. And the other small point is, why isn't the access coming in from the west side of the site? There's a lot of land that's in the owners, the applicant's ownership, but you've chosen to take it, or he has chosen to take it through other people's houses, which seems a messy little arrangement when there's all that access on the west side. Only a comment.
Yeah, Councillor Clark, the Doctors Hill, which is the highway to the west, it's quite a constrained part of the highway network. You wouldn't want to be providing the access point there, and obviously the access point from that serves the car parking for the existing neighbouring developments already there. So it is the best place to take access. Again, we have got the highways officer on the call if you want to discuss anything direct with her.
Okay, should we ask Emma to come in? Are you there, Emma?
I certainly am.
If you'd like to give Barry an answer, that would be quite helpful, I think.
Yeah, certainly. It would echo what Simon said. To be fair, Doctors Hill is much narrower in nature. Some of the swept paths would be very difficult. The area within the red line is actually opposite another junction, so it would be a very constrained access, and the area directly south of that isn't in the applicant's control. So there isn't a huge, there isn't much room to make any betterment.
Thank you. I know the area very well, so I know what you're saying. Barry, are you happy with your reply? Okay, thank you. I've got Helen wishes to come back, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was pleased to hear that the bungalows would be kept for over 55s in perpetuity. If the theory is that local people will free up local housing to move into these bungalows, some of these older people, could it be we're getting a clause in one of our applications in the Frome area where they are marketed to local people first for 6 months before they're marketed to the general population, before they go on any national websites. Is it possible to put in a clause about that in the conditions here so that local people get first dibs at those bungalows? Because bungalows are really hard to come by and there's going to be loads of people after them. So it should be locals first, surely. I think that it's possible to do that because I'm pretty sure we've done something like that in Frome. So that's my first question. My second question is sort of relates a little bit to what Claire was saying, is that we are starting a new local plan, and in it we've already got a draft transport plan. I'm not quite sure if it's been approved yet, which suggests that all new developments should have have sustainable transport. I'm just wondering, are we giving any weight to these kind of emerging plans? So, for example, this is going to be completely car dependent. I can't see the things that you've got in town. I think there's one cafe shop. Other than that, there's a pub and various other things. I'm not sure if that cafe shop sells milk or whatever, but most people are going to be going to work by car. I don't know if there's a bus service going through Wookey. It hasn't been said. There's nothing about it. And there is a line in here in paragraph 6.222, so about the 21 objections, saying that there's no pavement all the way along Henley Lane. And so the proposed access is poor by foot. So that seems to me that we're going to get people getting in their cars to go everywhere. And that doesn't really correspond with our principles, what Claire was saying about being a greener council with more active travel. So I'm just wondering, it may be that we can change the officers when they do the pre-app conversations with the applicants coming in can sort of emphasise that more. It might be that we can change the validation checklist that they have to do so that that's emphasised in the validation checklist. But I'm just wondering, sort of, it's a theoretical question really, how much actual weight is given to these emerging plans, because this is not a sustainable. It's not sustainable. It makes a mockery of the calling it a sustainable development. It isn't a sustainable development. But if you can answer that and the question about the whether or not we can have local people having first dibs at the bungalows, please.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Okay, Simon, is that one for you or one for Jenny?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question, Chairman. In terms of the bungalows and restricting the availability to local people with a market housing development, we won't do that. We've got no basis to do that. I think your reference might be where it's affordable housing, where we are able to do it. But obviously they'll be marketed and I guess local people will probably know about them first because it's taking place in their village. So they'll have just a good opportunity, probably better than people from outside. I think your next question it is a little bit more theoretical, as you say. Again, if you look at your report pack, we're already using the placemaking principles for Somerset, which were adopted in October as part of the policy basis to assess applications. Again, we've talked about the contribution to the Strawberry Line, so let's move on from that. Although you've said you don't think it is a sustainable location, that's part of the assessment that we have to do when we're considering the planning balance. And there is a footway directly in front of the development along Henley Lane, which will get you so far into the main village. And then, yeah, admittedly, within the village, there might be sections of the network that don't have a footway. But in terms of the immediate context to the application site, there is a footway that people could use. There's also a bus that will take you to Wales. And again, we talked about this in quite a lot of detail when we were completing the planning balance in terms of is it accessible for people to access services, facilities. There's actually also a footway on the main Wedmore to Wells Elm Close. So if you go out of the village onto the main road that links Wedmore through to Wells, there's a footway along all of that section. And when we were talking about it in the office, somebody said, yeah, my children went to play with someone in Wookey, and they walked into Wells. So again, not suggesting that you'll make all your journeys as a pedestrian, but I think overall on balance, we felt that it was a reasonably sustainable location in order to access facilities and services, notwithstanding the fact that it is, a tier 2 settlement, as we call it in our local plan.
Thank you. Can I just come back?
Well, be quick because there are other people waiting.
Are there? Okay, sorry. Just to say that young people, yes, it's great to see them walking into Wells and whatever. But I agree with Councillor Reid that there needs to be contribution for active travel for Strawberry Line, if possible, so we can get more people cycling. And also I am concerned about. We have to agree to disagree about this being a sustainable location, because it doesn't mean I won't vote for it. I might not vote for it, but yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Helen, as always. Adam.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, really. I think the question about the disproportionate growth that I had has been answered, and the active travel. Happy to see a contribution to active travel. And it's not a donation. We can't use the word donation, can we? It's a contribution to be agreed. And the other question I had was about the application being for 9 dwellings, and clearly that's possible to avoid any affordable housing contributions. But is that based on the local plan, or is it based on additional legislation? And if it's the local plan, then can we remove that threshold next time to avoid this problem of lots of applications for 9 houses going in everywhere? Thank you.
Okay, Simon, I think.
Yeah, it's local plan, Councillor Boyd, and directed by the NPPF. So 7, 8, 9 years ago, it was down to a lower figure than 10. But the NPPF, when it was first introduced, established that level as the threshold when you can seek affordable housing.
Okay, thanks. You okay, Adam?
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, we're going to have one more person, Ros, and then we'll go to a vote. Thank you, Ros. Oh, Dawn, you haven't spoken, so you can speak.
Sorry, it's just a comment, really. I'm quite horrified that at 55 you're seen as elderly. I feel like in 14 months I'm going to have to buy myself a bungalow. Yeah.
That's a good point. How do you think I feel? Right, okay, Ros.
Thank you. Two or three things of correction. One is, unlike most communities, Wookey has a large number of bungalows, a significant number, and also a significant number of affordable housing. But it doesn't mean to say we don't need more affordable housing within the wider community. Third thing I would say is, and I'd like to correct Alex Fulton when he talks about the housing number as based on need. That may be a national figure given to us, but it's not based on local need. And I think we just need to be careful about the language around these housing numbers, supply numbers, because there is no evidence that there is housing need as such. Thirdly, we're talking about Henley Lane. Now, Henley Lane is a really important quart lane going into Wells. You're perfectly right that the Wedmore Road has a pathway alongside it, but it's a very fast road. It's probably the most profitable road for the police because they have speed cameras on it all the time because it's very, very fast moving. And all I would say is that we need to be aware that Henley Lane, unlike the Gypsy application, is really important part of the quart active travel routes into Wales, and therefore putting more traffic on this road is going to happen. And then when we look at the contribution, we cannot use the Gypsy Lane application as the appropriate contribution for active travel. To make this sustainable and really genuinely, there's going to have to be significant investment getting into Wales away from the Wedmore Road, and it will be Henley Lane. So whatever happens, it will have to be related to that. And I think that's really important. So the idea of a sizable, substantial contribution. So when we look at the proposal to approve this, but with an amendment to the 106, can we have it quite clearly that if we're delegating authority to officers and the chair and ward member, that we are quite clear that this needs to be looked at in the context of the village itself? Because I would support, it's not a sustainable village, it only has a superb shop, cafe, hub, but actually that doesn't make it a superb village. It actually needs the access to all the amenities and the secondary school in Wales. And therefore, I think that a genuinely thought through plan around active travel is quite critical for this development. And I think that's probably enough said. I'm delighted to see that the rest of the field is going to be used for, but only for a relatively limited period, trees.
That's permanent. It's the fallow field that was temporary.
Okay, my apologies then. I'll look again at these. You pop through it fairly quickly, where the fallow field, where it was, perhaps offline we'll look at it. But so I would happy to support it, but I would like to have very clear that we are supporting this with amendments to the 106, and I assume reserve matters will come back to committee.
Again, the reserve matters will be processed in accordance with the council's constitution. So if one of the divisional members or the parish council raise a concern that require it to be, it will be.
Okay, so it will go through the process. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Ros. Before we go to the vote, precisely, is there anybody who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? No? Okay. Oh, Dawn. Yeah.
It's just a point of confirmation. Obviously, the recommendation that's been presented by the officer is to approve. From the discussion around the table, obviously members appear to be quite keen towards the contribution towards active travel to make sure that the placemaking principles have been adhered to, which is within your remit and balance to do. Effectively, what the recommendation would be in that case then would be to delegate approval to the officers subject to appreciating that fact. So you wouldn't be able to approve it in this forum because we'd need to agree that detail. So if you are happy with the officer recommendation, you can move to approve it. If you want to recommend the contribution to be worked on, then that would have to be a delegated decision to officers.
Okay, does that sound everybody clear?
Thank you, Chair. Could it be deferred to come back with the answers so that we could be confident in the active travel? I'm not saying that everyone wants to do that.
We already have one motion
Okay.
to go. You could always do
It's a yes
that
or
if you
no
wanted,
answer.
but do we really
Yeah.
want to do
It's
that?
a yes or no answer.
In terms of clarity, it can be deferred to come back. My hesitance would be it's 9 dwellings. We've already spent an hour debating it. Members appear to be relatively happy subject to the contribution. If that is delegated to officers, then it's agreed with the chair and the vice chair and the relevant area members. So my question would be, what value to the council would it be in terms of having it back to redebate again? But it is an outcome that you could recommend.
Yeah, I was just going to say if Claire's happy first. Are you?
But no, I just wanted that answer because it wasn't given as an option, but now I know why you didn't give it as an option.
Okay, that's brilliant. Ross?
No, it's all right.
It's okay. Okay, we'll go to a vote then. I believe that the motion...
Sorry, Chair, I don't know who seconded. I didn't hear a seconder. I know Councillor Reid. No, she didn't.
Seconding Rob's.
Rob, yeah.
Seconding Rob's motion that we go with the officer recommendation, subject to a extension of the 106 in respect of active travel, which we delegate to officers, and recognising what Dawn has just said. Technically, we're not approving, we're approving with the caveat that we're delegating that approval to officers once the 106 amendment has been satisfactorily met.
Okay, does that sound, and that's okay with you, Leslie? Okay, so we know where we're going. I did actually believe that Helen had seconded. Okay, so all those in favour of going with the recommendation? Okay, who's counting? Okay, we've got the numbers. All those against and all those abstaining. Okay, thank you. That one is carried. Thank you very much. Question, do you want a comfort break now because we've only got 2? Or do you want to wait and not have one? You think you want one? Yeah? Okay, let's take 10 minutes. Cheers.
15:15.
15:15, yeah. Okay, 1 minute calling before we get back to our chairs, please, seats. Okay, we're nearly there. Brilliant. Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item 6, I believe it is. And is it, Rose, you're presenting this one? Yeah, please. Oh, fire away.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully the slides will pop themselves up. Yes, so this application is for the erection of 20 dwellings in Beckington, alongside open space and connected infrastructure, as you'd expect. The recommendation on this one is for approval, and it is a departure from the development plan, subject to full suite of conditions detailed in your report and a Section 106 obligation to secure policy compliant 30% affordable housing, on-site biodiversity net gain plus monitoring contributions for that one. And this is the statutory biodiversity net gain because the application came in October last year. So we're meeting the statutory BNG requirements through a blend of on and off-site provision. 106 would also include a management company, and the key things there would be to make sure that we get the right level of resident involvement and fee structure right for the open space sorted out. An NHS contribution towards meeting the funding gap the NHS think they have between homes being occupied and those new residents being reflected in the data for their funding agreement. So that's a total contribution. The financial contribution towards the roundabout improvements, which is a per dwelling contribution, off-site public open space contribution for upgrades to facilities in Beckington, and then generic monitoring contributions. So just to have a look at where the site is, it's undeveloped land to the north of the core of Beckington, in the top, well, I was going to say top right hand corner, it's not, it's right top middle. You've got the roundabout at the north of Beckington. Just above the red pin, we've got the existing Great Duns Close, and then to the south and west, we've got the core of Beckington itself. The site layout proposes a mix of short terraces, semi-detached properties and detached properties, with parking provided in a mix of on and off plot, as well as garage accommodation throughout the site. And then I've just got a zoomed in slide here so that you can see that at the south end of the site, there is an area, a proposed local area for play. So that's the smallest formal play area, alongside community planting, orchard planting, and an informal open space area. Members may recall a previous application here that was decided on appeal in October 2022 on a very similar footprint. And the key issues in relation to that decision were the effect on heritage and then the effect on drainage issues. In relation to the heritage issues, I wanted to flag the location of the conservation area. So the lime green colour to the bottom of this image shows the conservation area for Beckington, and then the pale green area with the in here. This is the application site. So to the south, it abuts the conservation area, and this is Goose Street along the bottom. So in that previous appeal, the inspector said that the harm to the settings of the conservation area and the listed buildings would be at the lower end of the scale, and it would be outweighed by the public benefits of that particular scheme, notwithstanding the great weight that should always be given to avoiding harm to heritage assets. And in our report this time, we've gone through the same balancing exercise, and we consider that the public benefits of the current scheme also outweigh the heritage harm. Just as a reminder, that's the appeal scheme layout, which is similar overall in terms of the extent of the built area compared to the open space. It was a little bit more dense because it was 29 or 30 units rather than the 20 that are now proposed. In my opinion, there was a less attractive parking layout, but that in itself as a layout was acceptable to Pins. Importantly, though, on the previous appeal decision, the inspector did raise concerns in relation to foul and surface water drainage, and that was the substantive reason for refusal of that appeal. Notwithstanding that there were solutions at that point that could be foreseen, the inspector wanted to make sure that we had enough information before making a decision on it. And so the application that we've got before us now, we think, solves those issues. So having a quick look at the drainage strategy, this plan demonstrates the drainage strategy overall. You've got the blue line going to the north for the surface water and the brown line going northwest for the foul. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more closely on the surface water first. There's a combination across the site of water butts, and they are shown on the plans and secured by condition. Rain garden features at the fronts of the properties, around the properties. There's large areas of permeable surfacing throughout the site, and ultimately all of that leads to attenuated flows being fed to the north of the site where there's an existing drainage ditch, and then the drainage will travel to the east from the site, and then to the north under Bath Road. And there is provision in the conditions to make sure that the culvert works to support that drainage scheme. So that's built into the surface water proposals. And then for the foul drainage, just zoomed in here so that you can see at the bottom, the top left image shows the bottom right-hand corner of the site where there's proposed to be a pumping station. And that pumping station will push the foul flows north out of Beckington to the connection point across Bath Road. And then the bottom right-hand corner image is a generic illustrative image of what a pumping station that you might get to serve a site of this sort of size might look like. We don't have the final details, but it's not a building. You don't really see very much above ground. You might see some infrastructure, but it's not a big intrusive object. A number of overall though, the LLFA, the Lead Local Flood Authority, and Wessex Water are both satisfied that that combination of foul and surface water drainage solution works. So we've got enough detail to have the confidence that it will work, and then we have applied some conditions to make sure that what's being proposed is what gets delivered. A number of representations that have come in through consideration of the scheme have been in relation to how the site sits with its surroundings. So I just wanted to show you some sections. The first section runs through the site north to south. It's AA. So hopefully you can pick that up on this overall slide. So we're running A to A, north-south. And at the very left-hand side, this is an existing dwelling. We run through the site boundary all the way through. This is the highest point of the site, facing out onto the open space and moving through to an outbuilding on Goose Street. And then that tails off from that taller building again through to the properties on Goose Street. And this gives you an idea both of the level differences, but also of the significant separation distances that we've got running across the site. The next section is B to B, so that's taking into account this property on Great Duns Close, existing property, and then running through the front of the site, facing on to the public open space. So you can see the size and the scale of the existing Great Duns Close property, and then the boundary, and working our way through the site again, west to east. And then the last section, if I just click back to this one again, C to C shows you the section through the very east side of the site coming down to Goose Street. So section A to A ran more through the middle of the site, whereas this one just runs through the edge of the site. So again, you can see both the separation distance, the substation building, essentially the size of a single garage, really, substations. And then you can see how the ground falls away to Goose Street on that one. The last cross section I've got to show you is a section through the open space. So you have the existing property on the western side of the site, and then the site boundary, and you can see the open space and the relationship there. Those cross sections are backed up by the quantifiable separation distances that we've got. We've got a couple of side-to-side distances of between 10 and 20 metres, but the back-to-back distances, which are the important ones, are roughly 20 metres, which is acceptable in this sort of setting. So throughout the site, we've got both sections and separation distances that, in our view, will lead to acceptable relationships between the existing and the proposed dwellings. This is a full application. And so then I wanted to show you some of what the development would look like. Starting with the street scene, I wanted to show the mix of materials that we've got proposed. And you can see when I get to the photos of the existing site at the end, how that will blend in with the existing Great Duns Close. And the predominant elevation materials are natural stone and render. That will be secured by condition. And we've also got a mix of brown and red roofs, so reflecting the character of the area. I'll click through these quickly, showing you some of the different house types that are proposed. Again, you've got a mix of detached dwellings, short terraces, characterful terraces. We've also got properties that turn corners. So on the left-hand side, we've got a bay window so that we can increase the passive surveillance. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a terrace where the door is on the end rather than the front, again, so that you can make sure that you're turning corners with those passive surveillance issues throughout the site. This is just an example of a couple of render properties, and the quite like the semis on the right-hand side. They feel a little bit sort of arts and craftsy, so they're nicely proportioned, nicely designed properties. And then this one, just an example of the integrated garage model, one of the models on site. So lastly, or nearly lastly, just wanted to show you the existing site. It was used, part of the site was used as a compound when they built, I'll call it phase 1, Great Duns Close. So you can see there's still a hard standing in there, but it is essentially an undeveloped site at the edge of Beckington, and would read as an extension to the existing Great Duns Close development. So last thing I wanted to say at this point is just to remind you that this is a full application for 20 units. Officers are recommending approval as a departure from the development plan, subject to a comprehensive suite of conditions and the Section 106 obligations as set out on your screen and in the report. Thank you very much, Chair.
And thank you, Ros. Very good. Okay, so we're going to move on to public speakers now. First one is Mr. Ben Richards, please, who's a local resident. Thank you. You have 3 minutes, Ben. Okay.
So good afternoon. My name is Ben Richards. I'm the secretary of the Beckington Parish Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, and thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I've been closely involved with the development of the neighbourhood plan since 2023, and we are aiming to cover the period that coincides with the emerging Somerset local plan, so out to 2040. I realise that our neighbourhood plan does not yet carry weight. We hope to reach Regulation 14 pre-submission consultation later this summer. Nevertheless, given the many volunteer hours devoted so far, and with around £26,000 of public money spent to ensure that we are developing a robust plan that includes residents' views on potential sites for future housing, I felt it was important to share some key points with you. What has come across loud and clear throughout the consultation process to date is how acutely aware and concerned our community is about infrastructure in the village, and how it has not kept up with the addition of 111 dwellings since 2006, despite the provisions of CP4. And there is real dissatisfaction with the well-known sewage system problems, including the rising amount of untreated wastewater being discharged into the River Frome. There are also very real concerns about the capacity of the roundabouts on the A36. At the end of last year, we engaged a planning consultant to conduct a call for sites exercise to identify sites that might be developed over the next 15 years. Letters to over 80 landowners resulted in 22 site submissions, and these were refined to 13 sites for detailed assessment by our independent consultant. 5 were then submitted to the parish for consultation in a written survey delivered to all households that closed last Friday on the 2nd of May. We had a 29% response rate, and we've analysed the survey results over the last couple of days. The site being considered today was ranked 3rd. The sites considered by the village community to be preferable to this one were two contiguous parcels of land adjacent to the A36 and accessed from the Warminster Road. And we believe that they could deliver around 64 to 72 homes. And again, I acknowledge that the neighbourhood plan does not yet carry weight, but I put this information out there for you, particularly if going forward there is an opportunity to take a more holistic view of potential sites rather than having to decide individual applications in isolation. Thank you very much.
Hold on. Yeah, it is working. Just a bit temperamental. Clive Winterbourne, please. Another local resident. Cheers, Clive. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Clive Winterbourne, the fourth generation of a farming family in Beckington. As a practical man and a realist, I understand that people have to have homes, but what I do not understand is why our parish is being taken way beyond its fair share. Mendip's local plan suggested proportionate growth of 15% or 55 new houses in the village to 2029. And since 2006, we've seen 4 large developments in Beckington, plus various individual permissions, now totaling 111. And in the parish as a whole, we've added 139 new dwellings. Now, this latest speculative development proposes another 20, with 4 years of the plan period still to go. Each time when a proposal is looked at by itself, the effects on the community are considered to be limited, but these developments add up, and so does the harm. Each development adds sewage to the point that the treatment plant is now totally unfit for current needs, dumping untreated foul water into the river for over 850 hours last year. Much of this ends up on my farmland, rendering it unfit for use until sanitised at my time and expense. Each development brings new residents. Beckington Family Practice is now over 100% of its capacity, and the planning inspector listed this as one of several reasons for his refusal of an appeal in the village in 2022. Each development adds traffic in the area, and yet there's no action towards improving the 2 roundabouts. In all of the years that there's been talk about it, it's quite well documented. Each development is built on agricultural land that, again, can never be farmed to produce food, and I find this quite alarming given the insecurities of the world and the need to feed the population in the future. The development affects protected species such as greater horseshoe bats, together with other species of bats, whilst removing certain habitats and environments. Each development dilutes the distinctiveness of Beckington and its historical character. The heritage harm this site will cause has been repeatedly noted as less than substantial, but when added to the other factors, increases the cumulative weight on the scale of the planning balance in favour of refusal. The current application is considered by itself to have limited harm, but in context of the 111 homes already added, the proposed 20 would take the overall increase in our village to 37% since 2006, whilst the critical infrastructure has not kept pace in line with CP4. We are a small rural community who respectfully ask the Planning Committee to refuse this application. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Clive. Cheers very much. The next person is Mr. John Bennett, please. And John, you have 3 minutes also.
Good afternoon. My name is John Bennett. I've lived in Beckington for 9 years and in Somerset for 42 years. And thank you for the opportunity to speak about this planning application. Our community is deeply concerned about the undercapacity of the Beckington wastewater treatment plant. This has not been addressed in any way by the case officer. Previous applications were turned down on the grounds of foul water impact in the centre of the village. This proposal does bypass the problematic sewer, but we now have a different problem because the sewage plant, built in 1951, has inadequate capacity for Beckington today and is simply not fit for purpose. The worsening situation is illustrated only too graphically by the following figures. In 2021, 15 combined sewage overflow events resulted in untreated foul water entering the River Frome for 183 hours. In 2023, 2 years later, 31 CSOs occurred, dumping untreated water for over 450 hours. In 2024, the treatment plant overflowed a staggering 55 times, discharging untreated wastewater for 854 hours. Over the last 4 years, the untreated sewage discharge has increased more than fourfold, and the grim reality is that untreated sewage was discharged on average, for 2 hours and 20 minutes every single day during 2024. Adding more homes can only compound this problem. Now, in NPPF Section 15, Conserving and Enhancing the Natural Environment, paragraph 193 states, if significant, and I quote, if significant harm to biodiversity resulting from a development cannot be avoided through locating on an alternative site with less harmful impacts, or be adequately mitigated, or as a last resort compensated for, then planning permission should be refused. The current application relates to one specific site only, with no alternative. No mitigation is proposed for the inadequate sewage works capacity, and no compensation is on offer. Therefore, in line with the NPPF and CP4, and on behalf of our community, I desperately request that the Planning Committee refuses the application before it today. Thank you.
And thank you very much indeed, John. Next, we move on to Mr. Andrew Tyler, who is also a local resident. Thank you, Andrew. You have 3 minutes.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Andrew Tyler, and together with my wife, we have a combined 35 years living in Beckington. In 1888, Beckington had approximately 185 houses. In the following 118 years, less than 1.5 houses were added per year. But since 2006, 111 have been added, virtually all in the past 10 years. That is more than 10 houses per year. The total rises further to 139 on a whole parish basis. The village alone has grown by double the local plan target of 15%, and approving this development today would take the village growth to 37%. And there are yet more opportunistic applications in current determination. In 2022, the planning inspector said, in rejecting appeal on another village site, the scheme would also result in a level of growth which, taken in combination with other housing completions during the plan period, will be disproportionate to the scale of the village. Government policy has opened the floodgates to speculative applications that ignore the planning authority's thorough and considered spatial planning. But unlike Somerset cities and towns, Beckington has not had a single infrastructure upgrade, additional facility, or capacity increase in public services to meet the huge growth in the village. A typical quote from our recent neighbourhood plan consultation perfectly sums up the real impact. The village grew too much and too quickly to enable the community and newcomers to integrate well, and we need time to consolidate and connect people better. Although further development is probably inevitable, it must be controlled better and with due regard to social cohesion and the capacity of the local infrastructure to accommodate increased use. This development will provide just 20 houses towards the housing supply shortage. This isn't even a scratch on the council's target, but it's another deep cut to our village. It is in direct contravention of policy CP1, which states that development outside the development limits will be strictly controlled and will only be permitted where it benefits economic activity or extends the range of facilities available to local communities. This application does neither. The spatial planning policies in the local plan never intended Beckington to be overwhelmed. CP1, CP2 and CP4 are abundantly clear on this, but this is what is happening. Sites suitable for allocation were determined by the LPA, and ultimately this one was not among them. We acknowledge that in the emerging Somerset plan more houses will be required, but we're pleading with you not to ruin our little village by allowing unplanned opportunistic development in the remaining few years of the current plan period. Once our fragile village is destroyed, nothing will bring it back. We respectfully ask you to refuse this application today, and we look forward to working with you on the emerging Somerset plan to ensure sustainable development for our village. Thank you.
And thank you, Andrew. Our next one from a local resident is from Mr. Simon Milner, but I believe that his will be read out by Andrew Tyler. Mr. Andrew, and Andrew, you're there, and 3 minutes again.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Simon Milner. I'm a Beckington Parish Councillor, but my day job is Director of Sulis Hospital, Bath, a large local hospital. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about Beckington's GP surgery, which was built about 40 years ago. In October 2022, at a planning appeal for a proposal elsewhere in Beckington, the inspector noted that the existing surgery premises were already operating at capacity in paragraph 39 of his refusal. Based on the ICB's submission in respect of 2 other current planning applications in the village, the patient list for Beckington Family Practice catchment area currently stands at 11,366, which is over capacity by 378, or 3%. According to their methodology, the current application for 20 homes would add a further 44 patients, taking the overage to 422 patients, or 4%. This might not sound like a large number, but for the increasing pressure on the medical infrastructure does put people at risk, both existing and new residents. As the patient lists expand further, waiting times increase, and access to adequate health service decline, resulting in poorer health outcomes and prolonged health problems. This will result in detrimental socio-economic impacts. In addition, more limited access to primary care has a knock-on effect on secondary health care, in particular on A&E services. If people can't see a GP, they will often go to A&E, adding to the pressure on that already stretched service. Sulis Hospital Bath is affiliated with the RUH, so I'm acutely aware of many instances where people block A&E when actually a simple trip to their GP or pharmacist would have sufficed. Increasing the overload on Beckington Family Practice will result in creating more of this problem. In the event that the Planning Committee is minded to approve this planning application, we would request an additional S106 contribution of 12,658 towards the cost mitigation of the pressures on the local healthcare facility. However, on behalf of the community, I respectfully request that in addition to the numerous other reasons for your refusal of this application, there should be no further development in Beckington until primary healthcare capacity has been increased to catch up with the demand. Thank you.
And thank you very much for reading that out. That's great. Okay, next we will move on to from the Parish Council. Ms. Tessa Hampton, please. Thank you, Tessa. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Today, I'm representing the Parish Council. The Parish Council urged members to refuse this application. The committee report outlines the site's planning history, explaining that the latest appeal was dismissed solely due to foul sewage and surface water issues. However, this decision was made when the site was allocated for development, with the inspector noting that the principal development was established under the development plan. Following the JR challenge to the local plan part 2 and the subsequent order to delete the allocations contained within, this allocation was removed and the site must now be considered as open countryside. It's therefore entirely reasonable to consider this matter again.
It's accepted that the weight given to housing constraint policies is reduced due to the 5-year land supply position. However, they cannot simply be disregarded. Core Policy 4 explains that rural settlements will be sustained by making planned provision for housing at a scale commensurate with the existing housing stock, with 15% increase proposed during the plan period. The committee report does not consider whether development is proportionate to the village. The development would cumulatively result in a 37% increase over the housing stock in Beckington during the plan period, with the village having delivered a 238% of the local plan target. The parish council believe this level of growth to be excessive. The local infrastructure has not kept up to date with the growth. Policy CP4 seeks to ensure that where development imposes burdens which exceed the capacity of existing facilities, new development is phased for delivery in line with improvement to the relevant infrastructure. The local GP surgery is at capacity and will not be able to absorb the increased patients arising from the development. There's no evidence to show that GP surgery can expand and no contributions are secured. Whilst the development proposes an alternative route for foul water and so avoids adding to the historic foul water issues in the centre of the village, the waste treatment plant is already overloaded, resulting in escalating number of combined sewer overflow events in 2021. The development is likely to result in an increase in the frequency and/or duration of discharges of untreated wastewater into the River Frome. This has not been addressed. National highways have concerns about traffic movements on the A36, specifically the capacity of the roundabouts east of Beckington. Whilst a contribution is secured to contribute to these improvements, there's no certainty to how or when these will be undertaken. Overall, therefore, there is clear harm arising from the disproportionate growth of the village. In addition, the site has areas of high and medium surface water flood risk. The committee report does not explain why a sequential test has not been undertaken for the site to direct the development to lower areas of flooding. As per the Mead Redrow High Court judgment of February 2024, the sequential test should take account of all sources of flood risk. Harm has also been identified to the setting of the conservation area and the nearby list of buildings. Whilst this harm is less than substantial, it must be weighed in the planning balance. Overall, the adverse impacts of granting permission would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The parish council therefore consider the application to be refused. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our next one is Mr. Ashley Grant, please. Thank you, Ashley, and you have 3 minutes also.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. My name is Ashley Grant, and I'm here today as an employee of Cotswold Homes, a privately run family business building in the region of 100 high-quality homes a year across the southwest, employing many local trades. The proposals before you are for 20 units, 6 of which will be affordable, and there is an in-principle agreement with Selwood Housing, an approved registered provider, to take on the affordable homes. All of the homes are to be built in high quality materials, including the use of natural stone and render across both the open market and the affordable units, so that they are alike and complement the historic character of the village. Hot water and space heating for all dwellings will be supplied by air source heat pumps, and each home will have photovoltaic panels fitted and an electric vehicle charging point. High quality landscaping is proposed and a significant amount of public open space as well. Your officer's conclusion is that overall the site layout and house design work well to create a harmonious scheme. You'll be aware of the planning history for the site, specifically the previous scheme submitted by Redrow Homes, which was refused by the council and dismissed at appeal on grounds related to the impact on foul and surface water drainage within the village. Our application has paid careful attention to this and worked hard to address the concerns. Compared to the last application, our scheme has reduced the overall number of homes from 30 to 20 dwellings, which we think is a more appropriate density for the site. Foul sewage will be pumped north away from Beckington, where it will connect to the existing sewer network, therefore bypassing the village entirely. And surface water from the development will be stored on site and then released at a slower rate than it currently drains, providing a betterment post-development. This has been heavily scrutinised by the lead local flood authority and it's been confirmed as acceptable. Overall, the application is a well-considered scheme supported by numerous technical assessments and robust evidence. It will provide much needed housing at a time when the council does not have a 5-year housing land supply. Much has been documented in recent times of the struggles of smaller house builders and the decline in their numbers over the past half a century, despite the key role they play at being at the leading edge of pushing quality over quantity. As a local house builder with a focus on high quality design and employing local trades, I hope you are able to support us by agreeing with your officer's recommendation for approval. The site will be a highly regarded development within our pipeline through which we hope to continue our legacy. Thank you for your time.
And thank you very much indeed, Ashley. Okay, that's the end of our speakers. We'll now move on to the committee. And who would like to open the debate? Helen, I did see your pictures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've actually got about 10 points, so I'm going to split it up and just do 5 now and then let other people speak. First of all, it's just an observation. Thank you to the officer for the report and for all the, you've sort of put the conditions at the front and then in more detail at the end, and for explaining that there's summer pre-commencement compliance, bespoke trigger, etc. I'm actually not entirely sure what all of those different categories are, so I might ask you a question about that later. And even though I've been on planning committee for 6 years, we don't think we've ever had any training about all those different kinds of conditions and when they get discharged and what triggers are. So that's just an observation. What I'm concerned about is this disproportionate growth, and I mentioned it in the last application we looked at. And the 37% increase, it does seem like an awful lot. The Beckington's taken a lot. I know that it's in supposedly a good location because it's on the way to Bath and Trowbridge where lots of people work. But it does seem to me a bit unfair that they have to take so many. And also going around and looking at the types of houses, I see on the proposed development on page 67, paragraph 5.1, that it's going to be a modest scheme of 20 houses. The housing mix is 3 two-bed houses, 5 three-bed houses, and 12 four-bed houses. Is this really what we need in this area? These four-bed houses, like the existing one in Great Duns Close. I don't actually think that's the kind of housing that we actually need. I welcome the fact that the applicant said that they would employ local people. And so that's my second or third point. My third point is actually about sewage. I've noted the increase in sewage, and even though it's great to have a separate foul drainage system coming away from the site, it's actually still going to go to the same sewage works. And the fact that they said there was a massive increase, I wrote it down somewhere, 800 overflows in the last year, just keeps going up. So I have got concerns about that, and it could even be one of the reasons, if we decide to refuse this, that we refuse it on the grounds of affecting the natural environment, because it's not respecting the natural environment. Surface water, again, I was interested in what Tessa said. Tessa Hampton contradicted what the agent said, because Tessa said something about that there hadn't been a sequential test, and I did notice that the underlying soil is kind of clayey. This is quite a high point, so yes, there's going to be lots of extra concrete and tarmac. I assume that you're going to try and do suds and have permeable surfaces, but I am concerned that there's going to be an increase in surface water drainage, and I didn't really quite understand. I'm sorry, I can't find it now. I've got so many notes. Oh, here we are. To ask what is meant by the sequential test, and has it been done? And on the question of soil, according to Natural England map, which I found online, and I've got a printout here, this is actually grade 1 agricultural soil, but that is not a very detailed map. You can't zoom in a lot. So I was just a bit confused about you saying that it was 3C. And that, you know, and then you also made a comment about, well, even if it was grade 1, it's only a small amount of land. But it just seems a shame, really, because the village are doing their local plan, their neighbourhood plan. They've identified other sites that might be better. And yet we've got a situation where this could be, if it is grade 1 agricultural land, it could be like an area of allotments. It's great that we've got the orchards. I like that. But yeah, so I'll leave it at that for now, but I've got some other things I want to come back to. So I don't know if you've caught all of that. I don't know if I can even recap it myself.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Does anybody wish to come back to Helen? Okay, Ros, you come back now. Better to take them in chunks.
I think an important one to pick up on is the impact of my understanding of the Mead case, the surface water drainage case. So that clarified that if there is surface water flooding, we need to do a sequential assessment of development if the development is in that surface water flooding area. As I have read the information that I've got before me, and my understanding of the case is that if the built development isn't in the area of surface water flooding, you don't then need to do a sequential assessment. And the surface water flooding that's recorded in the flood risk assessment that was submitted earlier this year demonstrates that the surface water flooding on this site relates to the drainage ditch at the top of the site. So it's separate from the issue of drainage capacity for the rest of Beckington. You know, that's a macro issue. The sequential approach is a more micro site specific issue. So in this instance, the disposition of the units across the site compared to gardens and open space and drainage means that we don't need to do a formal sequential approach, a sequential assessment for the surface water flooding. And there will be, in acknowledgement of the drainage difficulties, we have got attenuated flows. So the water will land on permeable surfaces. They will be permeable hard surfaces, so permeable tarmac, and will be retained in tanks and other forms of suds, retention features, and then it'll go through a hydro break. So it goes from big pipe to small pipe so that it goes out at the managed flow rate, so that it's only being released from the site at the capacity that the drainage ditch can cope with. Okay. So the theory is that it then heads off north across Bath Road at that attenuated flow rate. Housing mix is there is a policy in the local plan around housing mix, which talks about making sure that you do have enough 2 and 3s and fewer 4-bedroom homes. But on a scheme of this size, getting the design right, the housing mix right, and the affordable housing can be tricky alongside getting a viable scheme. So on balance, as an officer, it was my view the mix we had was appropriate given the other benefits that the scheme was delivering. Dealing with Wessex water sewerage overarching capacity issues, I don't want to say it's above my pay grade, but that again is a slightly macro issue, isn't it? It's all of the developments in the area are going to have to address that, or Wessex Water are going to have to address that for everybody. And it needs a strategic conversation, or Wessex Water need to have a plan. And in my experience, which isn't largely Somerset experience, it's not a planning reason for refusal. It can be very difficult to sustain because it feels counterintuitive, and it feels like it should be something that we have more of a say in. But unless and until there are concerns being raised by the Environment Agency or others in relation to it, we grant the permission. Wessex Water say they've got the capacity. They've said they've got the capacity in this instance. It is for other regimes to control. It's for the Environment Agency with their pollution prevention and control hat on to manage that more actively. And Simon or Dawn might want to say something if it's come up elsewhere previously on that one. But lastly, I think of the key issues, the agricultural land issue. Yes, the mapping that we've got, I think, is at a greater level of detail on agricultural land. So our records, and the applicant has suggested it is 3C. If it were grade 1, I still would be recommending approval. I appreciate it would make a nice allotment, but that's not the application we've got in front of us. The application we've got in front of us is for 20 homes, including policy compliant affordable housing, contributions to infrastructure as have been requested by the key consultees, including the Integrated Care Board and the NHS. And as it will be built, there's something definitely something to be said for applications coming forward in schemes of 20 in terms of the speed that those homes will be built and the level of infrastructure that's needed to support them compared to the strategic sites that have a 5-year, 10-year lead-in period. So these homes will get built and they will contribute towards meeting that affordable housing supply need in the local area. Unless Dawn or Simon wants to say anything about Wessex Water, I think that answers those first points.
I think also about disproportionate growth as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and infrastructure.
So the disproportionate growth point was largely answered by Dawn, I think, in relation to the debate in the first one. I was sitting in the back listening in, and we don't have concerns about the education infrastructure here. We don't have raised by the consultees. We don't have concern about the GP practice raised by the consultee. This site was in the local plan. I know it's been taken out, but it was considered to be a sustainable and a suitable site for development. I think that it's very easy. I live in a village. I live in Devon in a village, and it's very easy to draw a line in the sand and say growth from this point onwards is okay up to that level, but no more. But actually, most of our villages, certainly the village I live in, has gone through various phases of growth, and everybody's house was a greenfield once. What we've got here is a really sustainable village site in a village that's got good services, a good range of services. It's got access by sustainable modes, good road access. You know, we're making contributions towards the roundabout enhancements as well. Finding where I don't think that disproportionate, I don't think is the right word. I think this is appropriate growth at the edge of an existing well-served settlement that can, in some ways, help support the sustainability of those facilities.
Can I just come back on that?
Thank you. Yeah, I think you can come back. Would you like to ask your other questions now as well, please?
What, get them out of the way?
Yeah.
I think other people are waiting, though.
Well, I know, but we'll have to come back to you then.
Okay, well, I was just going to say about the disproportionate growth. I mean, we've just heard from some of the speakers that there isn't enough GP capacity. And we also heard from somebody else about the SIL versus, maybe it was the last application, SIL versus Section 106. We've got the same problem with developments in Frome. We can't ask for revenue funding to employ extra doctors under Section 106 because we've still got this ancient way of doing things in the Old Mendip area. Whereas if it was SIL, we could ask for that money. But plainly, there is a point where I think you say enough is enough because you haven't got the infrastructure there. With regards to the shops, I walked around yesterday and I couldn't see any shops. I saw one kind of cafe bistro, and there was 2 pubs. There's a garage for fixing cars, and then but if you then walk to the Beckington roundabout, there is a BP shop there. So when we say that something should be approved because it will benefit economic activity in the local area, from my point of view, I'm thinking, well, it will benefit in the short term some construction jobs, but the main place people are going to go to get extra milk and whatever, or a sandwich for lunch, is going to be to the BP shop, which is a multinational fossil fuel industry, and it's not the local economy. So I just wanted to make that point because I don't think that it's sustainable in that respect. So my other points were, sorry, if you want them all now, that the Beckington neighbourhood plan, I'm assuming from what you've said, is that can't, and what the other gentleman said is that we can't take it into account as because it's just emerging. So, okay, leave that. The footpath, okay, I went and saw a footpath that was coming out from the south side of the orchard, but I think it's a private footpath. It would be great if there could be some negotiations that open up, that we can open that footpath up so that people can go from the orchard down towards, I think it was Goose Street, so that if this goes ahead, there is some sort of footpaths other than just leading out of the estate towards the cricket club. So the way going out of the estate is going north towards, is going away from the village. But it would be great if there could be a footpath that goes back in towards the village because otherwise we're not really doing our placemaking principles where we're trying to facilitate a modal shift through multimodal travel measures. I don't see where we're trying to do that. It's another car-based scheme. So we're not really promoting sustainable transport, and that's in the National Planning Policy Framework. We should be doing that. Sorry, I've asked to do. I wasn't quite ready for the rest of them. Are the garages? Oh no, I think you've answered that. Great to see the PV panels and air source heat pumps. It does say conditions will be imposed. I haven't checked the conditions. The size of the homes. The proposed homes are taller than those in Great Duns Close, and they're on a bit of a hill. I don't really quite understand why this, and they're also, yeah, slightly elevated ground level. It worries me that they have got big high roofs so that people can put in lofts later. This isn't one of the few areas that has bats that are brown long-eared bats, I think they are. They're a particular type of bat. I wanted to ask, if this goes ahead, can we have restriction on permitted development rights so that we cannot have skylights in this on these houses in the future, so they can't create, because I see there's already a bat-friendly lighting scheme in the conditions, but it doesn't say anything in there at all about skylights, and I hope I might get a seconder for that. Sorry. The other stuff was about heritage. I see that in the past, the applications in this area have been rejected on heritage grounds. I know that in 2022, the inspector said that wasn't important. I heard a story from a local that inspector didn't actually visit the whole village and walk around and see the site and see all the heritage there. And therefore he sort of gave less weight to the heritage side of things. If I were going to propose to reject this application, which I'm thinking about, I would ask that we might do it on heritage grounds. And I think that's all my points.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Interesting points. Ros, not this Ros, the other Ros. Sorry. Yeah.
Normally come in multi-packs. It's really unusual. There were only a couple, I think, that I wanted to pick up on. Securing access to the south, I agree, would be lovely, but given the ownership position, it's not something that we can insist on. We do have a link through Great Duns Close out onto the Bath Road, which gets you to the bus stop. So you don't have to go all the way out to the north to be able to access the footpath network. You can come halfway out and back down into the village, which might be the route that you would take if you were going to walk to school. It would be preferable, but because there's land ownership issues, and I wouldn't want to be a house builder negotiating for what I appreciate that it could be really useful, but I don't think it's essential to make the scheme acceptable. So I that's not something I would insist on. In relation to the bats, we do have, as well as the light sensitive, the lighting scheme, we do have bat and bird boxes across the site as well. I'm not convinced of the necessity to take PD rights off to prevent loft conversions. So whether that's through skylights or dormer windows, but members may feel otherwise, and we could include a condition that just related to it'd be three things, I think, probably, wouldn't it? It'd be upward extensions, which is the new one, and then part B and part C of the GPDO, so putting in roof lights and doing dormer roof conversions. I'm not convinced that that's entirely necessary, but I understand the argument that you're making in that regard. I think these houses are already fairly generally proportioned, so that would lead to very large properties. But if people did want to do that, it's not that they wouldn't be able to do it, they'd just have to come back to Somerset and ask permission. So we'd be able to assess it on a case-by-case basis.
Could it just be roof lights looking upwards rather than dormer windows would be okay? It's just the ones that shine upwards that are the problem.
Yeah, it could be. So that would just be part B. of the GPDO, probably. Yeah, I mean, again, that's for members to consider whether or not that's appropriate. Yeah, nice to have brown long-eared bats. I'm more used to grey long-eared bats. I think that was it. I think they were the only two that I noted down for that lot.
Right, okay, thank you very much. We're done now. Oh, this Dawn wants to come in now. Yeah.
Sorry. It was just to confirm, you did also ask about renewables. So condition 30 to 32 covers off the renewables. So that is already covered by condition. In terms of the window lights, the one thing I will add for members to debate is if it was considered necessary, we would have had those comments from the ecology officer. If members feel it's necessary, it is something you can impose. What it would mean is that if any of the future residents wanted to put roof lights in, they would apply to the council. It would be free of charge because we have removed that right of them to have it. And then we would have to go through the work of determining the planning application and all its merits and consulting ecology on the off chance it may have an impact. So if it was considered necessary by the ecologist, it would have been added as a condition by the ecologist. But if members feel it is important, but what it would result in is future owners, if they want to impose, if they want to put in roof lights, they would have to apply for us. We wouldn't get any money for that application. We would still have to assess that application. We would still have to consult ecology for that application. So it's just points to consider.
Thank you, Dawn, for explaining that very well. So Helen will now have that in her mind as well, I'm sure. Okay, we're going to move on to Adam next.
Thank you.
Did I catch you unaware? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just expecting something else. Yeah, this is obviously mine, Dawn's Frome North Ward division. I know the village fairly well. I go to parish council meetings a lot. And my wife works in the village and our children have been there, and I drive through fairly often and I know the sites fairly well. Coming into this, I thought I'm not predetermined. I see the parish councils and residents' objections galore on lots of issues, and Tessa's report about the reasons they want things refused on, but also I see the report, and it's good to see that there's some affordable housing, and it's good to see that there's some solar panels and heat pumps that ticks those nice boxes, and it's several issues which are raised on, say, heritage grounds. I understand the report that's less than substantial harm. There's issues raised by some of the neighbours in relation to setting of their listed buildings or conservation areas, and that's in, and the appeal went to appeal on that last time for a larger scheme, but then it was not refused on heritage harm. So that takes the lead from the inspector in planning terms, but the only reason for it being refused in its former form was sewage and the impact on the community of the sewage not being dealt with properly, because previously the plan was to route the sewage through the village centre, and the village centre has still got issues in terms of overloaded sewers, which occasionally spill out during storms and flood the pavements and some back gardens with sewage, which is very unpleasant. It hasn't been addressed properly yet, but this application would avoid that by routing the new sewer outside via a pumping station outside the village, but then linking up through another existing sewage to the existing sewage works. So there's another issue there. I think I'm concerned about, in that with this application, and there's two other major applications as well that have been submitted in the last few months as well, which aren't mentioned in the report at all because they haven't come to committee yet, but they will do at some point. There's one to the east, which is land to the south of the service station and the travel lodge and Starbucks there. That's for 35 dwellings next to the A36, and there's another application the other side of the northwest of the village, across the road from the village hall, which is for another 24 dwellings, and that's called the Tower Hill application. And they haven't come to committee yet, but they will. So they'll have the same issues. So I'm thinking, well, what's the cumulative effects of this? We've had people talking about the capacity of the village, and well, it's kind of a vague idea. There's too much already happened, but being specific, there'll be an impact at the moment on the sewage works capacity to treat sewage, because you can see the data presented, and I've seen it as well, that the sewage works seems to be unable to treat during a storm particularly, or other times, sufficient sewage from the village to meet its discharge consents. And actually there's a potential issue here, because downstream in Farley Hungerford there's a designated bathing water which was designated last year by DEFRA. So I'm thinking, what's the impact? Does it matter that the sewage works is currently not coping with the last few years of sewage from the community, and then we're going to add to that, and there's now a bathing water designated downstream, which actually I'm on the steering group for, and the Environment Agency is hosting that in order to get Wessex Water to improve their discharges from the various the outflows, but also the sewage works. So Road, Beckington and Frome will eventually have to have better discharge consents, and they will have to have, say, UV treatment, and they'll have to have more storage. They'll have to really tighten up those discharges, which hasn't been done yet. They haven't worked it out yet. So in the meantime, we're going to be loading up, adding to the load of Beckington sewage works to pollute the river more, to reduce the water quality at the designated bathing water downstream, a couple of miles away, more. And then there's two other applications which could potentially do the same. So no one has assessed the cumulative effects of these three applications on Beckington sewage works, their discharges, and the impact on the water quality for ecology, but also for humans, for people who bathe in at Farley Hungerford. So is that an issue we can get some more information, at least defer to get an assessment of that impact on the bathing water, on the water quality, on the community? So that's a question. That's a concern. But the other thing is the primary healthcare. I've seen you've had consultations back from the NHS hospitals, which is RUH, which requested a contribution, but nothing on primary healthcare. And we've heard one of the speakers, who's a doctor at Learby Hospital, and I know for a fact that the Beckington Family Practice want to expand their Beckington surgery and have had trouble doing so. There was an announcement yesterday, I think the government announced, or this morning maybe, funding for GP surgeries, 200 or so, to expand. I don't know whether Beckington will be one of those, but it should be. So is there an issue also that we have a development and two other applications in already as well? So collectively, cumulatively, these three major applications could increase the pressure on primary healthcare, the GP surgery at Beckington Family Practice in the village, which ideally would cope with it, but at the moment there is insufficient capacity. Is there a way of finding out what the impact on that capacity is from this application and the two others which are submitted as well, to defer it on that issue as well until we know? Because I don't think we do know. If we approve this, I think we're accepting there's an impact on water quality and the bathing water via the sewage works, and we're accepting that there's a potential impact on the ability to see patients at the Beckington Family Practice Beckington branch, which is over capacity, or is it? I think I'm currently not happy to accept this development as it is, although a lot of the other issues I'm fairly happy with. And obviously, the reason for a local plan policy on is it DP27 on the impact on the roundabouts is a cumulative impact of developments. We're covering that potential impact on traffic and congestion on the roundabouts through a policy and through a Section 106 agreement, which has been studied and now agreed. That's fine, but these other issues haven't been discussed and agreed, so we can't mitigate them in an agreed way. So that's my 2.5, 3 issues really. I mean, other issues I think others are covered. So that's the question. Can we defer this? Would it be proper to defer to get assessments on cumulative impacts on GP surgery, cumulative impacts on the bathing water quality in the River Frome, and then come back when we know more?
Is that, excuse me, Adam, is that actually a proposal?
I think it's a question first, and if it is appropriate, possibly not impossible, then I would like to propose that. Yes.
Okay, well, we'll go to officers and see who wishes to take Adam's questions.
I'll start, Chairman. I listened to your debate, Councillor Boyden, and I think it is very, very valid. I think what we've got to remember is what our role is as decision makers on planning applications. So again, if you look at the way in which the inspector, as the decision maker on the planning application that was used in 2020, that they were quite clear as to why they refused the planning application, and it's about assessing the impacts of the planning application proposal. I think the points that you've raised about the sewage treatment plant being able to deal with foul water flows that arrive at it, it is beyond the remit of the planning decision maker. It's an issue for other bodies. It's an issue for DEFRA. It's an issue for the Environment Agency in terms of carrying out their permitting responsibilities. So again, I think I point you towards the responses from the statutory consultees that have commented on the planning application, and they haven't raised concerns subject to the conditions that are set out in the officer recommendation in terms of how the foul water and the surface water drainage that arises from this planning application proposal will be dealt with. Again, I think Ros has just looked up the response from the Somerset Integrated Care Board, which again is an issue that you've raised, and I think they've been quite specific, as we've said in the report, that they don't consider that there is a requirement to seek a contribution, as opposed to the response from the Royal United Hospitals consultee. And again, as planning decision makers, that's the technical consultee response that provides us as guidance as to whether an application is acceptable with regards to a particular impact. So whilst the matters that you've raised are important matters, they're not matters for us as planning decision makers. They're matters for the other organisations that operate the different permitting processes.
Okay, thank you, Simon. There's that an answer for Adam, and Dawn wants to come in as well. This Dawn.
Thank you. I think the only additional thing that I'd add in terms of the cumulative impact, cumulative assessments are usually done in terms of what already has consent and what is the impact of this additional unit or this additional application. So we can consider the application on its own merits relative to the consented position of all the other sites. The future sites that you've mentioned that have yet to come forward, they still have to undergo their own assessments and demonstrate their own acceptance against those issues. So again, just to sort of reiterate what Simon said, condition 7 does cover the foul drainage. It does say prior to commencement, we will be agreeing the details of that. That will be in conjunction with Wessex. And there is a primary health contribution set out in the heads terms for sort of nearly £19,000 towards NHS. But that is in accordance with the statutory consultee that we consult on planning applications. So those steps have been taken from a planning perspective, and we have covered them off, and the statutory consultees are happy with them from a planning perspective. But I fully appreciate for local residents, it's quite a significant concern.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. I'm going to Barry first, and then I'll come back to you, Dawn. Okay, so Barry.
Thank you, Chairman. This application, I can't remember whether it was the lady from Devon, the officer who said that this application reflects the character of the area. Now, I know Beckington tolerably well. I'm afraid I just don't get it. I know planning is very subjective, but I drive through Beckington and I see a nice village, nice cottage type buildings in the main. And what I'm looking at here is 20 houses on this site, 6 different designs. There's no unifying element to the whole development. These 6 houses look as though they're designed by 6 different people, as though there was a competition. And then they chose the best ones and put them all in this field and said, well, we'll have that development. I think it's quite an awful design from a visual point of view. I don't like it at all. But as I say, it's very subjective, isn't it? All that sort of thing. This is the 6th application on this land, as I understand it, despite all the others being turned down, and despite there being lots of other land that has been made available to the planning or the developers by the people of Beckington. They've got very good sites. I think somebody mentioned there are 12 sites that they've selected that could be used, better access for cars and vehicles, and would be more suitable to being put onto the edge of the village rather than dumped in the middle of the village, which is what is happening to this. And however these developments intended some time ago to put 30 houses on this site, absolutely beyond me. These houses have got the usual scratty little gardens, and if the number of houses was divided by 2, it would probably be much better. But I would ask the planner if we can have permitted development rights taken away, which is my usual one when we've got scratty gardens, if this must be put through, because there is no room for people to put their sheds for the kids to play, the obligatory conservatory, the greenhouse. The gardens will all disappear. Some of them don't even have half the footprint of the house that's proposed. And I don't think they're suitable. Beckington have fulfilled their quotation of new houses already, as we have heard, and the sewage system, which is demonstrably unsuited to any further development without improvements. It is not fair on people to say, oh, well, we'll flood it into the fields. Flooding it into the fields that belong to farmers, you're flooding it into somebody's business. It's not convenient to put it into the fields. You're spoiling somebody. They have to desanitize the fields. They can't grow crops on it for another year. And that is a huge cost that is not reckoned to go to the developer. There's no contribution by the developer for that sort of thing. So I suppose in summary, Beckington are not being NIMBYs in saying that they don't want this to happen. And if I could make 2 last points, please. The £32,000 that these 20 houses will contribute to the roundabout improvements, I'm not sure what we would see for £32,000 on 2 roundabouts. I mean, there's a scheme ongoing in Stoke St Michael at the moment where they've had concrete blocks in the middle of the road for the last 2 years. I think they spend about £200,000 at the moment. And all they've done is put concrete blocks in the road to stop HGVs going through. So what we're going to do with these roundabouts for £18,000, I don't know. And the last thing, I'm being repetitive now, officer, to remove the PD rights from these properties, please. Not only from, I think Councillor Kay asked to have them taken away from roof extensions, but also taken from the gardens as well. Thank you, Chairman.
And thank you, Barry. Would anybody like to answer, Barry?
I'll just clarify for you, Councillor Clark, the contributions towards improving the 2 roundabouts of Beckington and White Road. The contribution that's made would be used to fund the improvements that will be effectively being designed and procured through another process. So again, the cost of those works will be significantly more than the contribution that this application is making, but this application is making a proportionate contribution in accordance with your policy at policy DP27.
If I may, please, Chair. That rather presumes, though, that another application in the future, we know which one it is going to make the most significant contribution. But if that application doesn't go through, then this money, what would happen to it?
The requirement for this contribution and the fairness and the level of contribution, if you like, stems from the work to support policy DP27. Ultimately, if the money is not spent, it will be paid back. But that's the same with any contribution that we seek to be secured in a Section 106 agreement.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Barry. And Dawn, your turn. Thank you for being patient.
Well, I haven't been very patient.
I know I'm, you know, achieving elderly age, and I might not be clear on this, but the previous application spoke about an upgrade on the waste treatment works before work began. And I am just curious why that wouldn't apply here. If that could be answered first. I have a few more. Thank you.
Okay, Simon.
Again, just really referring to the comment that myself and Dawn made to Councillor Boyden's question. So effectively, what we have to do as decision makers on planning applications is assess the impact. And we've got the advice from the consultees who deal with managing wastewater, deal with managing surface water drainage, and they haven't raised an objection.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any more?
Yes, I do. Thank you. You know, the ICB, Adam and I have both signed a letter to the ICB from the medical practice in Beckington to ask for expanded property somewhere else. They are absolutely desperate. Also, just in the last month, the A&E has increased by 5.6% at the RUH because people are really struggling to see any kind of medical professional in the area. The Goose Street issue is something that I will always fight on this committee, is the heritage. It's pretty much the distance from here to those trees will be the difference, the space. It's about 40 metres from the back of Goose Street to the development. So those houses are high and they will look down onto Goose Street. So that means Goose Street can see them, which also is not relevant. And you're going to put trees in the way, but how long do trees take to grow and how much longer will that be? The other issue is, as we've mentioned, clay soil runoff. And those gardens and those properties are going to struggle with a runoff from this development. As Adam has mentioned, Farley Hungerford is the oldest wild bathing facility in the country. And they currently have poor water quality. People get sick when they swim there. And Beckington has had more than Frome in discharge into the river of 28,000 people, when Beckington is just over 1,100. And there are people in Farley that have waste going along the river there. But the other issue really is that when there are issues in the drain water system in Beckington, the whole roundabout around the Woolpack is ankle deep in foul, everything that people stick down a toilet. This village has had its fair share. It has had way more houses than it needs. Recently on the A36, they had to stop work for a day because they found a bat. And in this area, we have some horseshoe bats as well. They're not a lot, but they're there and they should be protected. As Helen mentioned, the 4-bedroom houses, I think we don't really need those in this. If we're talking about social housing, if we're desperate for houses, we don't need more 4-bedroom houses, and this seems to be quite a high proportion. This is the 7th time this village is fighting this site. This is the 7th time. They don't want it to be built here. They have 2 fields that they are prepared to say, build on there, and that will give you way more houses. That will have access to the roundabouts. You wouldn't have to come through Great Duns Close, which is adding traffic to them. And I'm not sure that £20,000, as we mentioned about the roundabouts, is enough. That's enough maybe for a 10-minute assessment. What does MUGA stand for? I just saw it on the first slide. Does that make us great again? Or I don't know what it was. So what was it?
Multi-use games area.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's £400 per household, which also doesn't seem like a lot for a village that's taken a lot of its fair share. So, just from listening to everybody, I'm quite frustrated that this village is keen to have houses. They've really made it clear that they are not NIMBYs. They understand we need houses, but this area, this little field, is just not what they want, and they're happy to produce other land for building. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. I will come back to you, Helen, but Ros is next, and she hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you. Half a dozen points, if I may. I noticed when the gentleman was talking about the local plan and the community who asked where they wanted housing, this site came number 3. And in terms of my local plan, number 3 is actually pretty high up a list of 12 or so. So it's not totally rejected. I think it's not the preferred 1 or 2, but it's still up there. So I think that's interesting. On Wessex Water, I'm really concerned about this, and I recognise this is a bigger picture. But with 1,100 residents, the 2,000 threshold to upgrade the 1951 water treatment plant means that it isn't on the list for the 2030 upgrades. Now, I appreciate that Wessex Water say they can cope, but they have to say that because that's a statutory requirement. What I am concerned about, and like be interesting if the officers could give some advice on this, could we actually treat that there is a trigger point, i.e. the development goes ahead, but only once Wessex Water have upgraded their 1951 treatment plant? Because at the moment it's not on the list. So, and the impact, of course, on the River Frome is really insignificant. I recognise roof lights and I recognise the officer's comments. My feeling is that, yes, we should treat roof lights very seriously. You've heard me talk about this and I'm not going to rehearse it again, but roof lights really are significant contributions to the quality of the night sky and whatever. And if I can in any way influence our ecologists, so when the application comes in the future, maybe they will realise, because officers are looking at a whole bunch of things. The fact they haven't commented on it doesn't mean they disagree. They just haven't made a comment. So I think that's important. The next point is, I was just saying to Barry that I understand your comments about that they are personal, about appearance of things. I hate applications where you have got 20 houses and they're all identical, or even if they're 2 or 3. Having individual hands and the appearance of a house on a group of housing actually makes it feel more human, that it's been done over a period of time rather than these bog standard, housing where you've got 20, 30 plus identical housing. So anyway, that's another thing. And the final comment I would make is that this scheme, I know the monies feel relatively small, but I compare and contrast to the previous one where we're saying, something for active travel, and the officer's saying it's going to be difficult. Well, gosh, per house, this is making a significant contribution in comparison to active travel. So I just think we need to be careful. But overall, we just be mindful. This has gone to appeal. It's been considered. The key thing about it was the sewage, and it's really about what's happening at the water treatment plant, which is going to be the trigger for me as to whether or not this housing should go ahead. So can we in any way make it a trigger condition?
So in my experience, where there is a real issue, and I'm not saying that this isn't of significant concern to the community, but I've known the Environment Agency put almost a block on more development. So like you get a holding direction from the highways, national highways, you get a similar response from the Environment Agency. So when they're very concerned, the Environment Agency will say, actually, do you know what? Until Wessex have upgraded their treatment works, you really, really mustn't be permitting any more new homes. And that's not the situation that we're in here. It's sort of analogous to the nutrients issue that we've got elsewhere across Somerset, but we haven't got that in place for Wessex Water for this treatment works at the moment. And I don't know enough about, whether that's because of this size and scale point that you're making, but we don't have those comments from the Environment Agency at the moment. And because we don't have those comments from the Environment Agency at the moment, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that putting some kind of Grampian condition on that said that the waterworks had to be upgraded first would meet the tests for applying a condition. I am concerned. It is a really difficult area where we've got this confluence of planning and other permitting regimes and other issues. I don't think I have seen appeal decisions where authorities have refused things and on sewage grounds and won. They might exist, but I'm not aware of them. It's really tricky. I think that the other thing is that this is 20 homes, and we can't expect these 20 homes to solve the pre-existing problem of all of the that's already in the village. So we're not going to find a solution on the back of this scheme. I'm sort of struggling for the answer at the moment.
So
okay, Dawn.
Sorry, just for clarity for members, Wessex have a statutory responsibility to provide appropriate drainage for new development. That is their responsibility. We as a planning authority cannot condition stuff that is covered by other services. So we shouldn't be conditioning stuff covered by building regulations. We shouldn't be covering stuff that's covered by fire and safety. We shouldn't be covering stuff covered by other statutory consultations. It wouldn't meet the tests for a planning condition. There are 6 tests set out in terms of what a planning condition must be, must say and have in it. It wouldn't pass the test and therefore it would be unenforceable to impose it. And it is something for development. Development must demonstrate it won't make any existing situation worse. From that, we've got the consultation responses saying they're satisfied with this scheme subject to the conditions. So condition 7 is the one in particular that covers foul drainage, and that does require that they submit, agree and confirm details with Wessex prior to commencing any further work. I think just in terms of myth busting as well, I think I did hear in the debate about flooding running off into fields. In terms of the surface water strategy, as part of the presentation, the case officer did say it would be stored on site and then released at a lower level than what the current surface water runoff from that site would be. And in terms of heritage impact, it has been considered and the impact was considered to be less than substantial. So based on the less than substantial and given it wasn't a harm last time in terms of the appeal decision, and I can't comment on the inspector's behaviour, but if he is an RTPI planner, which I think they all are, they do have a code of conduct and a practice that they should be undertaking full and robust assessments. Whether they did or didn't, that was a larger scheme. This is a smaller scheme. As part of the development, we would have consulted conservation, who have agreed no adverse impact or less than substantial harm for the proposal. So I think that covers everything. I think the only other thing was roof lights. It is up for members if they want to impose that as a condition. It is within your gift to do so. There was also the question about removing of PD rights for extensions and outbuildings. Again, that is something that members can impose should you wish to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. I think Dawn number 2 there, or I shouldn't say that. Dawn D.
The problem we've got is that we've got an expert saying one thing, Wessex Water, and then you've got lived experience of the people in the village. And the people in the village have all sorts of runoff into their gardens, sewage, foul sewage, into their gardens, onto the pavements, into the farms, and into the river further down at Farley Hungerford. So the lived experience is very different from the professionals. And I understand that the professional will say, well, we've got these amount of houses, we've got this 1951, I mean, that's even older than me, so you can just imagine how old that is, sewage works. And I think that that's a real, we're stuck in a very difficult place because the residents have a very different experience to what the professionals are saying. And I don't know where you go from there because you're stuck. It's like a Mexican standoff. Oh, am I allowed to say that? Right.
No. Okay, thanks, Dawn, who would like to reply to Dawn? The other Dawn, yeah.
Sorry, we're double dawning it.
Yeah.
Just in terms of, it is, as members have raised, it is a really, really difficult situation. And as a planning committee, we have to determine applications in accordance with material considerations. And in terms of what we can consider and what we can't consider, we are quite constrained. You know, we have to consider what the individual impact of this site is, not what the existing situation is experienced by members of the public. And I fully appreciate that there are experiences lived by the members of the public that are not pleasant, and any thoughts of that getting worse is obviously going to exacerbate matters. In terms of what members can consider, it is the additional impact of this. And then with regards to the additional impact, Wessex is the consultee that we go to, and we say, with these volumes, can they mitigate those volumes themselves? So actually they are not making anything any worse than is currently being experienced. In terms of surface water drainage, there was a bit, I think it's page 77 of the report, that does say there have been some remedial measures carried out within the vicinity to try and alleviate the existing situation. And there was also reference to the applicant wanting to be party to a bit of a culvert clearing issue, because I think it's when that culvert under the highway blocks, that's one of the main responsibilities for the localised flooding issues. But in terms of the scale that members can consider for this application, it's the extent of the additional impact of this individual application and whether that is appropriately mitigated by the conditions that are on the report.
Thank you for that one, Dawn. I'm coming to you in a minute, Helen. I told you, Rod needed clarification on something as well.
Thank you. Just what Dawn said, I asked the question, could it be a trigger event? And you say, no, it can't be a trigger event. And I think that needs to be really clearly understood, because I think all of us feel uncomfortable. I'm also aware I sit on the Somerset Rivers Authority, and we've put quite a lot of money into Beckington over the last 18 months to improve dual use drainage and foul water and whatever. And I hope that that will have made some difference to that community. And the very fact that the foul water from this development is now being taken directly to the treatment plant is reassuring. I am, however, understandably concerned, but realise there's nothing I can do. But as the treatment plant is treating less than 2,000, the likelihood of seeing any upgrades on it are not particularly good. But at the same time, if it's going there, then it's impacting the river, not the centre of the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Phil, you haven't spoken, so you can come next.
I do apologise for what I'm going to say next. Regards the discharge of sewage into the river from these sewage plants. I know we're talking about Beckington here, but actually we're talking about the River Frome. And I've got a list of all the spillages for the villages around Frome here. And the worst three are Coalford, which has increased 3 times in the last 2 years. Nunney, which is 2.5 times in the last 3 years. And Beckington is ×3. Figures Coalford of 1,441 discharge hours last year, compared with about 340 2 years ago. This is massively increasing day by day. And we've got the swimming at Farney Hungerford, which is open water swimming, which was a swimming club started by my mother 90 years ago. And it's been going all this time. It's in danger of being finished just because of all this sewage. Now, I know what we're saying, it's probably not a material reason, but when does enough become enough? You know, it could be this 20, could be the last 20. It could have been the last 20, what should have been the last. But we're getting very, very close. And the cumulative effect of the amount of sewage going into this river is seriously becoming a problem. I've got a couple other points I want to make. On paragraph 14.29, I don't know how this can be sustainable when every house has to have, in total, for 20 houses, 64.5 parking spaces. That is just outrageous. The amount of number of cars that 20 houses is going to put on the road. Then we go back to the doctor's surgery. Why are we paying money to the RUH in Bath when it's the local doctor's surgery that need it? And why are we not listening to the head of the Solace Hospital, which is part of the RUH, who in its notes today to us just spelled the reasons out why this should not go ahead. Thank you.
And thank you, Phil. Was there anybody who wish to come back?
If I can quickly, we're actually below the parking standards that the Highway Authority asked for here. I agree they're really high, but I think that in a rural area, we need to accept that for a long time, people are going to be looking to make use of private vehicle transport, whether that's internal combustion engine or electric vehicles or whatever it might be. But I think that it's really important that we collectively look towards making provision for electric bikes so that people have an alternative. But I agree, the parking standards are quite high. We're below what county wanted, what the Highway Authority wanted. And then just to reiterate, in relation to health contributions, we have responses on this application, both from the hospital trusts and from the Integrated Care Board, in relation to whether or not contributions were required from this development towards upgrading provision. The hospital team, the Bath Hospital team, said, yep, we need £18,000. And the Integrated Care Board said, this doesn't hit our impact criteria. We don't need a contribution towards GP provision from this scheme. So we, in terms of what Dawn was saying about material planning issues, contribution can only be sought where they're solving a harm and solving addressing the impact of the development itself. We have to be what we call Regulation 122 compliant. It has to be related to the development. It has to be necessary. So we can't lawfully request a contribution towards upgrading GP surgery. But we have accepted the wider NHS contribution.
Okay, thank you, Ross. I've got 3 names left on my list. I think that we would have been round in circles a little bit, or we're in danger of going in circles. So I'll be looking for a proposal after those 3 names have been dealt with. Martin D, you were the only one who hadn't spoken on that list. So if you'd like to speak first, please.
I've got a proposal to put forward, but I think it might be contradicted. I would like to say Beckington is a highly desirable village. I've seen other properties, new properties built in Beckington, that the same property on the other side of Frome sells at £100,000 less for a family home. So I think that developers will always have an incentive to build in a village like Beckington. One, I'd like to see the need of to clarify the quality of the land. I'm not sure we had a clear answer on that. What's the quality of the farmland we're building on? I think there's need for further consideration for the roundabout and what we're going to do with those Beckington roundabouts in the light of the forthcoming inspection appeal for Selwood Garden Community, which proposes the same thing. So there's a lack of clarity there as to what we're going to end up with. And the third thing, I think we need an environmental health inspection on the river and on the swimming area before we can actually make a decision on this.
So I'm inclined to propose that we defer, but I don't know that that's going to go down particularly well with my colleagues, but that we defer until such a time as we've got those matters resolved.
Thank you, Martin. I think Dawn wants to come in.
Thank you. I think the quality of land was confirmed by Ros, but I'll pass back to her for that one. In terms of the roundabout, it's not uncommon if you've got an infrastructure capacity issue at a particular location for National Highways to request proportionate contributions per schemes that feed into it to then ultimately deliver the infrastructure improvements. I know members are very aware of a particular site that's got quite a significant contribution attached to it. If that were unsuccessful, the contribution from this site, if it were successful, would still be collected, and other developments that feed into that roundabout capacity issue would also have proportionate contributions until you get to a value where you can actually deliver the improvements. If you get to a point where actually those improvements are critical and you can't accept any more development, National Highways do put holding recommendation on development. That's happened in the north area of Somerset. Previously, they've done it at Dumble roundabout, which is junction 23 in Bridgewater. They've also done it at junction 22. And for that, again, similar to this scheme, you come up with a proportionate charging scheme per development, and you just keep on taking in the contributions until you have sufficient funds to deliver the improvements, or you reach the trigger point where actually everything falls over and a holding direction happens. So at the moment, we haven't got a holding direction from National Highways. We have got a contribution scheme. It is being looked at separately to the other scheme that members are very aware of, because you have to assess each application on their own merits. So on its own merits, National Highways were satisfied with the contribution scheme. They haven't put a holding recommendation on it. In terms of the environmental health assessment of the river, I would endorse that approach. It's not for planning. For planning, we have to determine the application before us. We have to limit our considerations to the material considerations in this case. So in this case, for the scale of impact that this development has, the statutory consultees are happy. So if the risk for members to consider is if you did defer the application to await an environmental health assessment, which sits outside of planning and separate to planning, the risk is there could be an appeal on non-determination, and then it goes to the inspectorate and we could be liable for costs. So I'm just highlighting that as a risk. In terms of quality of land, I'll pass back over to Ros just to confirm.
Okay, Ros, do you know the quality of the land?
So I was confused by the map that I saw that showed that it was grade 1. The evidence that I've got, that one, the evidence that I've got looking at the more detailed mapping is that it's grade 3. There might be some elements of 1 in the vicinity, which is why when you zoom in, you get these funny mergings, but it's grade 3. It's not most versatile.
Okay, thank you.
I won't go ahead with that proposal until I've heard other people speak.
You're not.
No, I'm certainly happy with the answer on the consideration for the roundabout that Dawn has just given me. I withdraw that particular suggestion.
Thanks, Martin. We'll go to Helen and then Adam, and then we'll be looking for a proposal, please.
Right, okay, thank you. I have been involved with DP27 for a long time because a lot of developments in my division are allocated sites in Local Plan Part 2. DP27 isn't in Local Plan Part 1. It's something that was added when we did the allocated sites for Local Plan Part 2, and it was recognised that all those extra sites would require upgrades to the roundabout. So they did it in proportion to those allocated sites. I wrote to Andre Sestini this morning and asked him about future speculative sites like this and whether they should be contributing. And he said, yes, originally it did refer to committed development, but it deliberately does not exclude windfall schemes. And that particular DP27 refers to highway improvements around Frome and Road Beckington over the plan periods, etc. Selwood Garden Village, just to clarify, it's completely separate again, and there'd be a phase 2 at these roundabouts, and they would add even more money in if that goes ahead. But these works are going to go ahead anyway, even if Selwood Garden Village doesn't go through. Okay, so just to clarify on that. In terms of the conditions, I'm a bit concerned about, it says that there's been some works done in the village that Ros alluded to, and it says in the report under 14.3 that a series of drainage improvement works have been undertaken. This is for surface water in Beckington to try and remediate the existing surface water drainage problems. These have been completed relatively recently. So it appears to me that they haven't really been tested by a lot of rainfall over a winter period. So they've been done quite recently. That's that surface water thing. If you look at the conditions on surface water on page 93, condition number 5, it's saying that the surface water drainage system needs to be fully implemented prior to occupation of any dwellings. No, no, no. It needs to be pre-commencement, if you don't mind me saying so. In my area, we've got an application going through now. I think Simon might know about it. Ed Winter's been dealing with it, where what's happened is they've built out over half the site, lots of hard surfaces, lots of foundations gone in. They haven't finished the attenuation ponds yet. We had loads of rainfall at the end of January, February, and they weren't connected yet to the pipes that took them down to the river. They topped over, they flooded downhill, and they flooded all the gardens of the properties downstream. This must go in. If this committee decides to approve this application, that surface water drainage system needs to be in. It needs to be done. We need to have the plan first, and it needs to be done at the certain triggers. I mean, it can't. I don't know if it can be done before the houses get built. I don't quite know how you'd sequence it, but I had a discussion with Dawn about this once before. That it doesn't have to be pre-occupation, because otherwise they might be tempted to leave it till the end, and then you've got this problem, as you've seen. You've got all the old village is downhill from this site. So that's something that needs to be changed. And then also I'd like to make a proposal that if you are going to approve it, that we, and I think Ros might second it, that we take away permitted development rights, and that includes some of the things Barry suggested, and also particularly looking at skylights. Having said all that, I'd like to make a proposal that we refuse it, on the grounds that it's in conflict with the development plan as a whole. It lies outside development limits. It's disproportionate to the scale of the village. It puts additional pressure on infrastructure. I don't know if we have to specify that infrastructure. It will also result in the harm and character of the appearance of the village and the surrounding countryside. And I would like to say also that we'd like to refuse it on grounds of, like it has been refused many times before, and that's actually, this is a technical question, right at the front here. It's been refused many times before on grounds of foul sewerage and surface water impacts. If we think that the surface water issue can be managed, then we would have to do it on just foul sewerage. But it looks as if it's been refused on those grounds before, so I don't know why we can't refuse it on those grounds again, even if it's a Wessex water problem. So I'd like to see those conditions go in, and I may need a seconder if you are minded to approve. Maybe we should take those if there is a mood in the meeting to approve, or maybe if I can get a seconder for refusal, we'll do that first, and then we might have to come back to the other proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Helen. That's your last comment. Dawn here.
Thank you. Just in terms of clarity, there are slightly confusingly, but there are 3 conditions covering the surface water drainage scheme. So condition 3, which is the first one, which is above the one you've mentioned, it is pre-commencement. So before they start anything on site, they have to give us the details. And it does say for the drainage scheme for the sites during both the construction phase and the operational phase. So it is triggered before any of the works are carried out, and it does include the construction phase of development. So it's not just for the occupation.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. Yeah, I wasn't looking at that.
Don't worry at all. In terms of the foul and surface water impacts, the difference between this scheme and the previously refused schemes is the previously refused schemes in all likelihood had an objection from the LFA or Wessex to support that in terms of evidence. The issue that members would have this time round is if you were concerned about surface water drainage, given the statutory consultancies are happy with the conditions that have been put forward, and again for foul water drainage, given the conditions that have been put forward, we don't have the support of the statutory consultees on those grounds. And then I think within the reasons for refusal that you mentioned, the fact it's contrary to the local plan outside the settlement, yes, that is a conflict with the local plan. Obviously, we haven't got 5-year land supply, so the tilted balance weighs in favour of development, even if it is outside. So actually the question is, what is the harm of the actual development? And you were saying about harm and character to the village. You know, what harm is that? Where can you see it from? What is the impact? Is the questions that I would ask back to members if that were a reason you were looking at.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. Simon, you wish to come in quickly?
Yeah, just one clarification point with the helpful information Dawn provided you with on the management of the foul water. The difference between this scheme and the refuse scheme is actually it's a different solution. So Ros, in her presentation, you remember she told you about it being pumped up northwards as opposed to the previous scheme where it was actually going to go through the existing connection through the village. So it is actually a different scheme you got this time.
Can I come back about the conditions then?
You can be really quick.
Well, I've said something about the conditions already, so I'd like to propose that, and I'd like to have a seconder. There's also the very last condition, the habitat management and monitoring plan and the biodiversity gain plan do not have in brackets and behind them what they are. So I'm assuming they should be pre-commencement, because there is no plan so far that's been put forward on biodiversity net gain. It just says things might happen, things could happen, etc. They've done the baseline study, but there's no plans been put forward. So I just want to make sure that is a pre-commencement condition. It should we decide that we want to approve this.
Okay, Ros.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, apologies. So I think 33 might be a subset of something else. They might end up looking slightly different, getting merged into one, but definitely 34 is pre-commencement. It says in terms, the development shall not commence until the habitat management and monitoring plan has been prepared. So my apologies on that one. I think it might be helpful to members to, if we want to think about conditions for PD for extensions, if I put up a plan so you can think about which units you might do that for, because I think that the gardens are very different across the site. So if that would be helpful for members, I'd be happy to stick a plan up to guide that conversation.
That'd be done, could that be delegated to work with local councillors to do that?
I would be more than happy to work, you know, in general to make sure we've got an agreement.
Yeah, I think if it's approved, that can be fine. We can do that, can't we? Okay, right. So we're getting somewhere. Adam, your turn. You're going to be the last speaker.
Thank you. Yes, I have a proposal, which, as I said before, would be to defer this application so that we can understand and have assessed the impact of this proposal on human health and the environment, and specifically related to the discharge of untreated sewage into the river Frome and the impact on the environment and human health, including at the designated bathing water. Because we don't understand that at the moment, because we've got the sewage treatment works, which is overloaded and spills out far too much untreated sewage into a river with a designated bathing water, where people are being encouraged to bathe. There's that one point, and also to defer it to understand specifically the impact of this development on primary health care at the village's GP surgery, which I understand is over capacity, because the specific that Beckington Family Practice didn't respond to the consultation or weren't consulted, the Integrated Care Board hasn't assessed the impact because it's below their threshold. The Environment Agency on the water pollution haven't commented. So to say that they're happy is not correct. I would like to understand how happy they specifically are and what the impact of this development is on river pollution, water pollution, human health of river users, and the capacity of the primary health care surgery in the village. And if it is fine, then there's no objection. If it's not fine but can be mitigated, then those objections will be mitigated and dealt with. But I'm not happy to approve this at the moment until I understand those issues, which haven't been assessed. So that's my proposal. Is there a seconder, please?
May I just...
So,
may I just make the comment that I would like to see that environmental health check made by the Environment Agency or an appropriate external agency, not by Wessex Water.
okay, I think Leslie's going to come in this time.
On that very last point about the environmental assessment, Dawn has already covered that extensively in her comments previously. I don't think we can go back and make a decision on that in view of what Dawn has said.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Martin?
I don't think specifically we've had the answer about the bathing site in Freshford, which is affected by it. We've heard, sorry, Farley Humford, I beg your pardon. I don't think we've had that as a specific answer. I don't know whether we've ever encountered that before on this committee.
I tend to agree with you. I can't remember that coming up before, but I do know of the bathing area, the open swimming sort of thing. So yeah,
the difficulty is, it is not something that's a planning material consideration that members would be able to refuse or defer the application on. So I fully appreciate it's a concern. I fully appreciate it's something that members would like more information on. I'm happy to endorse an approach or a letter to say that from the committee there is this concern. Can we have some further information about that and the remedies or measures that are being put in place to address that? But it's not something that we can refuse individual planning applications on when we don't have any statutory consultees actually saying that as a result of these 20 dwellings, there will be significant harm and therefore environmental.
At the moment, Christopher, in the middle of very serious bits on planning.
Someone on the meeting that's got their mic on. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not proposing to refuse it. I'm proposing to defer to get more information so that we specifically understand the impact on these two specific issues. I think pollution was used as a reason for refusal at the inspector. It's always a different sewage proposal, but it's still the same sort of issue. It's discharging foul water from the site development. That was actually a reason for refusal. So another, the EA haven't commented because it doesn't involve a new outfall. So I want to consult the EA. I want us to do these things to understand the impacts as we're concerned about them. And the community is concerned about the impact on health through the river pollution and the GP surgery capacity. And that's what I want to defer it on, not to refuse it on. It's different, isn't it?
I think the issue is
I have put a proposal together and we've had a second. It's not something that, that's what the committee wants to do. That's what we'll do, isn't it?
Which is fine. As major development, the Environment Agency was consulted on the application. They haven't raised an objection. In terms of healthcare provision, we have a statutory consultee we consult, who we have consulted, and they've come back and they've not requested any contribution. So in terms of planning and what we can do for the planning application, we've done everything we can do in terms of the planning application. I understand members want, and I understand that there's a motion to defer at the moment. The risk that I'm raising is if you defer an application without a material planning consideration, it can go to appeal and we would be considered to be unreasonable if there isn't a material reason to defer it. So I'm just raising that for members to have a think about.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. Ros, I'm going to let Ros come in because she
Yes.
wishes to say something.
Thank you. Just about health provision and the response of the ICB. People need to remember that GP practices across the country, almost without exception, are a commercial decision where the GP partners want to trade, in essence. And so if they have, and there are not many communities of 1,000 have a GP practice sitting in their community, and it's a wonderful thing, and I totally applaud the local GP practice who run that there. But it's the ICB commission GP practices to, on the whole, private businesses to provide certain primary care services. And therefore, they wouldn't necessarily, when looking at a specific GP practice, whether it's a standalone or it's part of a wider partnership, I know not. But as a generality, all I'm saying is that I'm not surprised that the ICB have made no comment, because this is a commercial decision by the GPs as to where they wish to trade. And as such, there is no requirement, as long as there is an overall provision of GPs, and we know that right across Somerset, the ICB is struggling to find GPs, even in the substantial towns of our community, which is why I suspect that that's the response we've had, because it's outside the norm, so to speak. Doesn't mean to say that it's not a brilliant GP practice, and it doesn't mean to say that the people are very fortunate, but I'm just explaining why I think the ICB have not come back. It may not help you, but it's just the way the health service works.
Okay, thank you, Ros. Thank you, everybody, at the moment. So we have two ideas for a motion. We have Adams to defer, and we have Helen's to refuse. And we have nothing but Dawn.
I'll just second Helen's if you needed a seconder.
So you're seconding Helen to refuse. Okay. Anybody? And Phil? You're gonna second Adam.
Right, so I thought Councillor Dimmery's already seconded it first, so it's the first one that gets voted on, isn't it?
Yeah. So the first one I've got to do, the first vote we've got to do is to take Helen and Dawn.
No.
No? Oh, Adam.
The votes get taken in the order where they were firsted and seconded,
That's
which was Adam's one for deferral.
So Adam with Phil. With Martin, sorry. Yeah, yours was already seconded.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's do this one. Right. Everybody who is in favour of a deferment for, do we have a set time?
And can I also confirm what we're deferring for?
Yes, please.
Well, as I said, when I made the proposal, and you'll have to listen back to that, but it was related to the impact of the proposal on untreated sewage discharges, pollution of the environment and human health, specifically related to the bathing water designated site downstream, and the capacity of the GP surgery to accept and treat patients
planning
in the village. So it's community facilities and
that's not actually a planning reason.
They are related to planning.
But
obviously we can disagree about that. But
I think if members are clearly uncomfortable with the application, I would suggest a deferral, but not for the specific reasons mentioned, to allow officers to get further information to the members on a variety of issues that have been raised, to give you the comfort in terms of the recommendation that's being proposed. The specific reasons you've mentioned, Councillor Boyden, I would be hesitant to endorse that as a recommendation, given I don't think we can substantiate them as material planning considerations. But if we say members feel there is insufficient information for you to determine the application in its current form, in terms of drainage information specifically for the 20 dwellings, because that's what we're looking at. And, you know, concern about the NHS contributions, which we can go back to the statutory consultee and confirm for members, and then we can bring it back to members for further consideration.
Thank you, Dawn. Now, does that sit with you, Adam? And Martin?
I think we've got to take advice, but also why. And it's about those issues. And I think the Selwood Garden community, we were minded to refuse, weren't we? On a variety of issues, and then it came back to committee. Other assessments had been carried out. As long as that information is in that, in the information about what I've said is in the what you'll chase, and you will consult the local stakeholders as well, and actually find out specifically what those assessments are going to be, and not just go back to people who haven't responded and say, oh, they're still not responding. Then I'll be happy, but only if it's a specific. But actually, we get some specific answers on those.
I think we will be looking further information on the planning material considerations. We will also look into what further information we can provide members that sit outside of planning, but may be sort of in parallel to this application in terms of localised issues. But if it's not a planning consideration, we cannot refuse or defer an application on that basis.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. Now, Adam, Martin?
I've got nothing further.
You're not happy?
No, but I've got nothing further to add.
I'm happy to propose a deferral on that basis, and then it's for the committee to decide whether they're happy with that.
Okay, but is Martin withdrawing as your seconder?
Do we have a time?
I'm not withdrawing. I'm not withdrawing. I think a specific check needs to be made on that freshwater swimming site specifically, and the damage that's coming from the sewage outfall from places like Beckington and around there before we can press on. That's a specific request. I'm not happy that the Environment Agency have actually done that particular work. They might have looked at the village, which, frankly, I'll say it, is appalling. It's an appalling mess. And we shouldn't even have to discuss this at this level. We keep bringing it up and being told we can't turn it down on that basis. Just how much sewage has got to be running through the main road of Beckington before we actually stop building there? I'm really tired of these. I understand, Dawn, this is not a criticism of Dawn, but these are obstructions to what is common sense. And I understand why we're doing it, because we have to come up with an answer that's acceptable under planning law and regulations. But it's very, very frustrating.
I certainly understand that. So, Dawn, we've got that so that those two things can be written in as well, yeah?
Yeah, so the drafting I've got at the moment is insufficient information in terms of foul drainage in respect to the proposed 20 additional dwellings and its potential on the surrounding rivers.
Okay, so Martin's happier now. Adam?
Yes, as long as we deal with the primary health care as well in some acceptable way.
Can I take that as an informative from this meeting rather than a reason for refusal? Because technically we do have a response from the doctor's surgery, but we will be picking that up as part of the deferral.
In the deferral, it's not a reason for refusal.
Yeah, but it's a note in terms of other things to issue rather than.
Well, the concern is the capacity of the GP surgery to accept new patients. And any mitigation that may be required from the NHS. Yeah, that's the concern.
Okay, Rose, you can ask a question.
Quick question, Adam. What would you find acceptable in terms of the GP surgery?
A specific response about this development and the impact on primary care specifically. That's what we haven't got.
Not necessarily a mitigation, it is just a response.
A mitigation as well, specifically.
As well?
Okay, because
specific mitigation if required.
I think in terms of addressing off members' concern, obviously we've got the speaker who spoke about the local GP surgery. What we can do is we can forward that on to the statutory consultee. So we've received this as part of the committee debate.
Yes.
Members are keen to understand your view relative to your previous comments in terms of no required contribution.
Yeah.
And see what response we get back
That's
then
fine.
from that.
I think like me and Dawn can also chase things up too. Thank you.
Okay, now do we have a motion or we have one? Can somebody read out what we're going to have, what we're going to be voting on to the committee?
Thank you. So it's recommendation for a deferral due to insufficient information in terms of foul drainage in respect to the proposed 20 additional dwellings and its potential impact on the surrounding river. Also to check on the NHS contributions as a result of public speakers.
Sorry, Chair, is it just the one motion? We don't have to, we won't have an.
We've got to do this.
Thank you.
We're doing this one first. Okay, Barry, what just quick.
Yeah, just quick. If we're deferring, how long are we deferring for?
Well, that was a question I asked and we haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah, if you want me to find out the answers to all the questions you've asked, I don't know, because it will depend on how long it takes consultees to get back to us. So what I don't want to do is promise it will come back next month if we haven't got the answers to the questions. So I would like to say for an indicative time frame of up to 3 cycles, but it will be dependent on the comments coming back to us.
Okay, that was what was in my mind roughly. So we're okay. Okay.
could we make it 4 months, please? Because the August meeting is going to clash with it's on the very same day that the Selwood Garden Community Inquiry starts. So it means that a lot of the councillors here are going to be at that inquiry.
Okay, so we've altered it to 4 months.
Sorry, Chair, we would bring it back as soon as we can, and I'm not sure that we would want to hold it up because of something happening somewhere else. It increases the risk of appeal, which is really significant every day that passes while we're considering deferral on these matters. So as soon as we had the information, we would be bringing it back, if time allows, to the next committee cycle. So we're trying to be cautious and we want to under promise and over deliver rather than the other way around, which is why Dawn's being cautious about the time it'll take. When we're dealing with third parties, under-resourced other third parties, we just don't know how long it's going to take. We need to work out who the people are that we need to talk to, if our links are going into the right place already or not. So, yeah, it's a really serious appeal risk. But the longer we take, we'll be bringing it back as soon as we can.
Okay, so we leave a time frame off. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay, so we're leaving the time. We're not going to do a time frame.
I think it would be advisable to take the officer's recommendations, which were to bring it back to this committee as soon as possible. Members understanding that we don't know how long it's going to take the consultees to come back, but to have something in the decision, I think, would be beneficial and useful.
Okay, we've got it now. We know where we're going. We know what we're voting on. Okay, so all those in favour of Adam and Martin's proposal, please put your hand in the air now. That's 6. All those against? And any abstentions? No abstentions. So that leaves me with a casting vote. And so as a casting vote, I'm going to go with my original one. I'm going to vote in favour of Martin and Adam's proposal that we defer temporarily. Okay. So there we are, everybody.
Can I ask a clarification, please? A clarifying question. Does that mean that when we come back and debate this again, we can only focus on those 2 issues, or can I, in that same meeting, maybe go back to my original reasons for refusal, which were greater than those two reasons and included disproportionate growth, lack of infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. Can I?
Oh, dear.
Technical question.
Dawn, what would you think on this one?
The technical response to the technical question is the reasons the application was deferred for should be the main reasons that will be the focus for consideration for members when it comes back. In terms of the other reasons, they have been subject to quite a lengthy debate and it didn't make it through in terms of additional concerns or points for clarification for the deferral.
That's because I didn't have a seconder before. That got seconded, but it might have gone through. I don't know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that one's business on that one is concluded. We now go to appeals, where I think Simon will be doing the honours.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Looking at the list, members, I think rather than go through any of them in detail, because they're all relatively low key and not strategic in their importance. If there are any questions, queries that you've got on any of them, I think that's probably a better way of using this session.
Yeah,
Ros?
Could we have some learning from this? It's all very well to have a list and look at them, but actually we need to think about what are we doing well? What are the officers doing well? What have we done which has not been as good as it could be? It just seems to me that we're just looking at a list. We need to actually do some self-examination or self-consideration.
Chair, can I just ask quick question? I've already requested that, and I requested to know. I've requested to know. Is it because of is it an officer led decision that's been appealed against? Is it us? I asked for that data, and I was told it was too difficult to give us that. It's been email.
Well, that seems strange because the ones I read, I can roughly work out in my head which ones are officer and which ones are committee. But never mind. Yeah, I see the point.
And in chair, aren't you, Nick? So maybe you're closer to it then.
Yeah, maybe I'll take more of a thing. Yeah.
In terms of reassurance to members, we are currently reviewing the appeal decisions that we're having back, particularly since the MPPF update, because we've had quite a few appeal decisions since the additional housing target figures have come out. So there's an officer who's currently reviewing that to come out with a kind of bit of a training exercise for DM officers as much as it is for committee in terms of what pattern are we seeing in appeals, what conclusions are we seeing in terms of tilted balance and how that works. And then we will be feeding that back to officers, but also to members in terms of learning outcomes. And we don't look at it in terms of what's committee, what's members, what's officers, because actually officers are also getting applications allowed because of the presumption in favour of development now and the tilted balance. So we don't tend to segregate between delegated and committee, but it is something we will look at as part of the programme as well. So it's not us v them, it's all of us together as the council together in terms of what decisions are we making, what's the pattern of development from the inspectorate and direction of travel, and actually what do we need to learn from it going forward. But we will run that training when we've got that information. We've got someone looking into it now.
Okay, Rose, yeah.
Timescale for this, Dawn, it sounds a worthwhile exercise, and certainly I think we would all appreciate that.
I would hope within the next month. Someone got tasked with doing it last week, so they are in the throes of going through it.
And the other thing which would be interesting to have is actually whether or not there's a commonality across each of the planning areas, or whether there is a particular flavour to a particular committee, because we are dealing with different local plans and also different dynamics of the committee. And I think that we just need to have we owe it to ourselves to actually be honest and wake up and smell the coffee. What are we doing well and what could we do better?
Yeah, I think the East and South committees have similar appeal performance, and the East and South areas have had less than a 5-year land supply for a much longer period of time. The west area has only recently lost its 5-year land supply, and the north has just followed in the last month. So appeal decisions from north and west tend to be less significant than the east and south as an early indicator. But, you know, it's not fair to give any further comments without going through the detail of them.
Could, when we do it, actually look at the size of the applications? Because I'm very aware that certain committees see only very large applications, while other ones have a much more varied agenda. Great, thank you.
And sorry, will that include looking at the reasons given? Is that what Ros is asking? So, like, for example, a lot of these might be that they've been refused because they're considered to be isolated dwellings in the countryside with delegated officer decision making, and then the inspector's overridden it.
Yeah.
So is that the sort of trend that you'll be looking at?
Yeah, so the plan is to have a look at the appeal decisions, have a look at the material considerations that we as a council thought was worthwhile in terms of refusing it, and then ultimately what the inspector concluded, whether they agreed or disagreed, and actually what points they disagreed on if they allowed it, because that's learning we can all take from it, you know, whether it is committee or whether it is officer level.
Okay, thanks. Everybody finished with their questions? No, I can't see any. Okay, I will declare the meeting closed. We can all go home.